The entire thing is asinine.
All 9 donkeys worth. Asinine.
I just gestured to all of it.
Hold on. You need to hear it from the horse's mouth before you dismiss it.
Don't listen to asses.
We can dismiss it in a minute. Let's at least understand it before we dismiss it. Okay.
I don't know that I'll ever be able to understand it.
You can't insult asses like that. They at least have some value.
Continue on.
Okay.
Stop it. Welcome.
Hey, yo.
To the Naked Apple.
Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All of it. That whole naked thing. Pork of judgment is out. Must mean that the jury is backed with a verdict on Trump.
Oof.
That is an ongoing story.
Yeah.
We will probably talk about it next week.
Yep, it is.
If there's anything left to talk to next week.
Dun. Yeah. Yeah, as usual, nothing's going on. So, as usual, I think we should just get right into our weekly dose.
Give him the B.
Give him the B. Love that B.
Phrasing. Welcome to your vitamin B.
Oh, vitamins.
We have the biggest, hardest bee you've ever seen. Just for you. That bee is the FBI. The biggest bees you've ever met.
Yes.
FBI and CIA relieved they no longer have to travel abroad to turn countries into banana republics.
Can work from home now.
Work from home.
These new COVID rules are great.
This is not what we meant. This is not what we meant.
Suicide.
In your average everyday Joe news, man who feels terrible begins exercising so he can feel a different kind of terrible.
No pain, no gain.
Speaking of men who should feel terrible about themselves, men's figure skater comes out of closet as heterosexual.
I knew it.
I didn't. Never would have guessed that of a men's figure skater.
He was too clumsy to be gay.
In other news, Gringotts Bank fails due to unsustainable business model of hoarding customers' gold in a giant cavern protected by a friggin' dragon. Yes. In other news,
Go dragon, go broke.
go dragon, go broke. This joke just drags on and on and on
and on.
The number of true crime podcasts surpasses the number of annual murders.
Wait.
Yes. There are more people talking about murder than committing murder, which is a first in China. God confirms man crushes on Henry Cavill are not gay.
Oh, well, then in that case.
In that case.
Wow. $20 is $20.
But it's not gay, so you don't have to pay.
Right. Oh, well then, even better.
Speaking of getting paid, Biden offers hush money to 330 million Americans to not tell anyone how bad he's doing.
I'll bail you all out if you shut up.
Yes. And last but not least, the news that you've all been waiting to hear about. Manhattan DA announces plan to get Trump reelected in 2024. It's a very, very intricate plan involving
Trumped
a
up
lot,
charges.
a lot of different things.
How can we make him more popular? I know.
I know.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
And this has been your vitamin B.
That was a hearty hi-ho of a bee there.
It was.
I'm pretty
That
sure
was-
I didn't get half of the jokes that you were saying in between the two of you.
Perfect.
As it should be.
The
Remain
headlines,
innocent.
yes, but between the two of you, I don't think so.
Well,
Remain innocent, my naive friend.
that was the silent bee.
I'll take it.
It's all right. It's always funnier when there's one person in the group who doesn't get it.
Yes.
I'll take pride in that. I think.
Every group needs a sweet summer child.
Oh, my sweet summer child. That's a sound clip we need. Oh, gosh.
Fabulous.
Fabulous.
Well, we're going from comedy to clown world now, I guess, because
That's how this works.
that's how this works. So for this week's a bushel intro, we have something.
Oh, I thought you actually had something. For
No,
it.
no.
It's my turn.
Yes.
It's my turn. Okay. Let's see what we got. Yep, here we go.
There's an old saying in Tennessee, I know it's in Texas, probably in Tennessee, that says, fool me once, shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
It shouldn't be funny every time, but it is.
It's funny every time.
Every time.
It's almost as funny as Biden turning around after talking on the podium and trying to shake the hand of a person who was never there.
I keep forgetting I'm president.
Whoa, where am I? Where?
This is my sister, or my wife.
Sister, wife. Wait.
Questions?
Questions.
So with that, we have, starting off, a quick update on COVID and green energy things.
Oh, goody.
I tried to find the clip of us talking about this about a year and a half ago, but I don't have time to dig through all of the COVID stuff we talked about a year and a half ago.
The hours and hours of COVID
So
things
we
talked
encourage
about.
you to do it.
Yes, go back and listen because it's worth your time. It's not worth my time, it's worth yours.
Because we already lived it.
But
Or at least you did.
Congress has confirmed now through documents that the U.S. knew about COVID research in Wuhan and its military ties back in 2017 because we were funding it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like we said almost 2 years ago.
Just
I mean,
almost
that
exactly
makes
like
sense.
we said.
Wasn't that also before Fauci predicted that there would be a big pandemic?
Yes, with the
during-
NIH being part of the funding for that, which he was the head of.
Oh, well, that's
Yes.
lovely. Okay, let's...
Moderna has admitted that they have never had a sample of COVID to test their vaccine against.
It's like trying to create an antidote without the cure.
From the horse doctor's mouth,
without the poison.
although he's not the horse doctor. Here's what
And
he
around
said.
the world, what happened was a couple of companies, so Moderna in Cambridge and BioNTech in Germany, took that data and started working on their vaccine. Now, what's interesting is that Moderna, for example, has never had the live virus on their site. It was all a software problem from them. I remember talking to Stefan.
Oh, they just use software models. Good for them. North Carolina has announced that they're going to use eminent domain to remove homes and a church that's been around since the 1800s to build an electric vehicle factory.
Because that'll help society.
Because that's not going
How
to make
exactly
your
is
voters
eminent
angry.
domain
Still a thing?
constitutional?
I know.
Ever? At all? How did that ever become a thing?
It's right up there with the civil asset forfeiture. It's basically the same thing.
Theft, yes.
Yes.
Well, extortion, which is theft by threat of violence, but yes.
The difference between paying taxes willingly and the ATF or the IRS showing up to take your taxes from you is the weapon that's involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a quote I heard the other day that, I've heard it multiple times before, but I absolutely love it. And it was, government can do absolutely nothing but through force.
It's true.
Which is
This is
perfectly
true.
true.
Yep.
And that was part of a much bigger story that he went through explaining it all, but that's the summarization of it.
The summary of the nuance.
Government can do absolutely nothing through force. They are incapable of using persuasion. They can only use force.
Yeah, they tried persuasion by trying to get people to get jabbed with burgers and payments and all this stuff, and nobody would do it. So they went to forcing you to do it. A banana republic, if you can keep it. The crime. Congress has obtained records that connect the Biden family directly to Chinese Communist Party money. The cover-up, Hunter Biden, the next day, sued the computer repair shop owner for invading personal privacy for sharing the laptop with FBI and other sources. The distraction, the day after that, Trump announced that the New York district attorney is threatening to arrest him.
Amo, you magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Perfect. In case you're wondering how extradition would work, because that's what would have to happen with Donald Trump, there is a link to findlaw.com where it has all kinds of legalese that basically says Donald Trump can only be extradited if Florida agrees to extradite him, which Ron DeSantis has said that he's not going to work with the Attorney General.
Cool.
So,
Because the Attorney General is Soros funded.
Soros funded, yes.
And it's 110% political.
Only completely.
Only 110%.
Speaking of DeSantis, he was asked if he'd get involved with the Trump indictment, to which he gave a roundabout answer of no. And Vivek Ramaswamy also responded to the Trump indictment, another presidential hopeful, where he said that people need to be a lot more upset about this than they actually are, because...
About the trumped-up charges?
About the trumped-up charges, because it's only...
Pun intended.
It's only completely illegal and completely politically motivated. So he has a point, and DeSantis also has a point of just not getting involved. DeSantis, in that announcement, also pivoted the conversation to point out that it's a circus act, and it's currently just rumors, but Americans need to be more focused on stopping things like a central bank digital currency. Speaking of, the banking system is secure. 2 banks that shut down before SVB were a couple of the main banks for cryptocurrencies. And they want to start a central digital currency. Gavin Newsom, who was pivotal in helping to bail out SVB, failed to disclose that that's where he and his businesses bank. Oops. That's only completely illegal in the state of California. If you go back to the last banking collapse, we can look at what Iceland did back in 2008. They jailed their bankers and put the prime minister on trial.
Love it.
I think that is a great blueprint for how to handle that.
They haven't really had any banking issues since.
Well, if the people in charge actually get held accountable for what they do with other people's money,
it's the damnedest thing. They actually care.
It's amazing the cooperation you'll get out of people when they're responding in self-defense.
Yeah. Well, again, you have to reduce the moral hazard some way.
Yes.
Right.
Something fun to look at here is when weekly earnings year over year flipped to the negative in the United States. Here's a handy little chart over the last 3 years.
What are we looking at?
So this is year over year average weekly earnings. The real average weekly earnings for United States citizens.
Oh, so like an average.
So it
citizen?
takes into account inflation that the government says, as well as actual inflation versus how much you're making.
So when did it turn negative, Trevor?
Somewhere about March 2021. In fact, actually in March 2021.
March 2021. What had just
nosedive
happened a couple months before March 2021?
Switch to the 5-year view.
5 year, just for giggles.
Just for giggles.
Let's see.
Where's that dip where it was like right on the line with 0? What year was that?
Of this one?
No, the other one.
This one?
Yeah, that one.
January 2020.
Okay.
So the start of COVID rumors. And then
and then the bailouts
people
happened.
get an influx of money via the government.
That graph might be important when we talk about SVB failing in a minute here.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, back
Go
to
go to 10-year for me.
This is interesting.
That's pretty stable for the previous several years, isn't it?
for until the government decides to completely get involved.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
That's
It's almost like it's proportional to the interest rates.
Almost. Anyway, completely coincidental to this is in March of 21 is when the American Rescue Plan was signed into law. It's entirely coincidental.
That's with the bailouts and the PPP loans and all that. No. That would have been 2020.
No, it was a bunch of green energy stuff. And,
yeah, American Rescue Plan was Biden's pork plan.
yeah. And it clearly helped rescue. Well, that doesn't take effect until the next year. Yes, well, the market saw it pass, and so they were affected thusly.
Yeah. The market isn't reactive, it's proactive. For those of you that don't understand what those words mean, reactive is when something happens and then it responds. Proactive is when something is going to happen and it responds. Which is what happens with gas prices. It's what happens with the stock market. It's what happens with literally everything. Because if you aren't proactive when you're making an investment and running a business, then you're going to lose a lot of money.
Yes.
Because you have to be ahead of the trend, not responding to the trend.
Speaking of ahead of the trend, Warren fat piece of crap Buffett
Yay.
has been contacted by the White House to help with the banking collapse.
Let's not.
Yay.
He's only the one that was the main figurehead for the 2008 collapse, where he made a lot of money.
Yeah.
Also, coincidentally, I'm sure a lot of private jets flying from headquarters of banks are landing in Omaha at the same time, which is the home of Warren fat piece of crap Buffett.
Are we having another Jekyll Island meeting?
It's just
Nebraska?
Is
that what's going on?
Just coincidental, I'm sure. Nothing really to look into. And in your Senators Suck category,
I'll take Senator Shuck for 500.
that's actually the category.
Anal bum covers for 100.
Hey, I got that reference.
I understood that reference.
We need to give Keith one button.
Yes.
One button, and it is Captain America. I got that reference.
I understood that
reference. I will press that button with pride.
Another great line right in that same area is, that guy's playing Galaga. Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
But we did.
After credit cards back out of tracking firearm purchases, senators are calling on the Department of Justice and the Treasury to create new rules to track purchases because senators can't make those rules themselves, apparently. Also known as laws. And
of course they can't. They get removed from office so fast their heads would spin.
And a handful of senators are also calling for the Pentagon to send F-16s to Ukraine And Lindsey Graham, I believe, earlier today or late yesterday, announced that he's fully on board with sending F-16s to Ukraine.
Of course he is. He's
willing to get to the bottom of any situation.
He's always been a war hawk.
You shut your war mouth.
Wow.
And that is this week's Bushel. Stop. Don't come back. All right. What do you want to dig into there?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I say we start at the very beginning, which I'm told is a very good place to start. So COVID research in Wuhan, we knew about that in 2017 because we were funding it. Is this something new, though? I feel like it's not anything new.
It is not anything, new, but it's being...
We talked about it years ago.
It's being sold as something new, but it is not something new.
So it's just not a conspiracy
It's
anymore.
the whole reason why Ron Paul was questioning Fauci. Why were you funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan? We have never funded gain-of-function research. What you're talking about is incorrect, Senator. I am the science.
But if we are funding COVID research, then
It
was totally legitimate.
And it's not gain-of-function. Yes, that's where his line of questioning comes from, is because we already knew that. It's just now it's officially known.
That was the first time I've attempted a Dr. Fauci impression.
That entire thing needed a lot more cowbell. You don't get that reference, but that was stolen from a video of a man smacking people with a frying pan.
At a Black Lives Matter protest.
At a Black Lives Matter protest.
He was having none of it and just started whacking people.
I mean, some people say I need to watch more movies, but I don't know.
Real life can be just as fun, really.
Real life is just as entertaining sometimes.
So yeah, that's where that stems from. And it all stems from back in 2005, where we were trying to militarize it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is
And,
also, I believe.
Moderna saying they never had a sample of COVID. They just had the software stuff. So
So they were called over to China to help figure out why everyone was having this flu they couldn't identify.
Hold on. I want to try to argue why that's okay, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong.
Okay.
So, like, my intuition would say that could be okay because if they have the gene sequence, what do you call it, modeled or whatever, and then they send the data over to whoever's trying to make a vaccine for it, they'd be okay because they could, like, look at the gene sequence or whatever and do their science research to counteract the gene sequence.
Yes.
So why would it be bad if they didn't have a sample?
Because
on paper,
virtual is not real life.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
On paper, it looks great. Here's a real world example. I used to work at a place where they decided to start making their own pistol. They had every single part made exactly to the measurements that it's supposed to be made at, the nominal measurements. So when you make something, you have a range that something can be, a tolerance of the part size, right? They had every single part nominal. It was exactly the measurement that's called out. It wasn't deviating from that measurement. And the CEO of the company stood up in front of us at an all-hands meeting, told us this, and said, with all those perfect parts, I'd be damned if the son of a bitch wouldn't fire.
Did it fire?
It did not fire. Every single part was exactly what's called out from engineering.
Okay, so basically what they're saying is you need to, like, the models or whatever are very useful, but then you need to test it against the real world and then go back to the drawing board and make better models.
Yes.
So basically the same reason our climate models are garbage.
Yes.
Is because they are always getting them wrong and therefore are definitionally unscientific.
Almost
Everything but real world data is nothing but conjecture.
Almost as if trying to predict what the Earth will do will give you results that you want.
Yeah.
Because it never does. Yeah. Like every single oil spill that just magically cleans itself up. This is the biggest oil spill ever. A week later.
It's going to take 25 years for this to go away.
1 week later, it's no longer in the headlines. Why? Because it's gone. Why? Because the ocean is actually really good at
self-filtering.
Doing its job. It's weird.
That's not to say that we should just go willy-nilly dumping things.
I mean, this is news to me.
You know,
I don't know how the ocean works.
But yeah, the ecosystem in general is very, very good at filtering out what it needs and keeping what it doesn't.
Especially when it's something that comes from the ecosystem, like oil.
I mean, filtering out what it doesn't need and keeping what it does is what I meant.
Yes.
I got that. Got a little dyslexic there with my words.
It's okay.
All right.
Biden understood what you were saying.
And then
Biden did understand.
Eminent domain. I think we pretty much covered that in the bushel.
Yes.
Eminent domain.
It sucks. It's stupid, and it's for an electric car factory.
It's a crime.
Which doesn't actually help the environment.
And nobody really actually wants.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the more fun stuff. So Biden is a criminal. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, so James Comer subpoenaed for bank records for Hunter Biden's business associates. And in those bank records, it showed not only did this Chinese communist-controlled company, it's a private company in China. There's no such thing as a private company in China.
Amen to that.
Because
it's a communist country.
If you are operating a business out of China, there is a
China owns part of your business.
There is a member of the Chinese Communist Party on your board to make decisions for what you do in China.
Yep.
Yes. And everywhere else.
Yes.
They run your business.
Yes. So in the records, he found that there was a $3 million payment to Hunter's stuff, which was then divvied out among 3 Biden family members. One was Joe Biden's brother, I believe. Another one was the daughter, one of the daughters, Joe Biden.
I believe one of the widows.
The one with the diary?
I don't remember.
I believe it was the widow of Beau Biden, I believe.
Oh, probably.
Anyway.
And then the third one, it just said Biden.
Must be the big guy. So do we know for sure that it was Biden himself, Joe Biden himself?
That's what he's trying to get more records for, more bank records for. Because all of these records that he has comes just a couple of weeks after an email that's in Hunter Biden's laptop where he was emailing his Chinese associates saying, I have given you access to all kinds of things, including my father and all this stuff, and you haven't paid me.
That was an email from Hunter Biden?
A couple of weeks later, that money comes through.
And
10% for the big guy.
And we are fairly certain that a good portion of it went to Joe Biden himself. And even if it didn't go to Joe Biden himself, like, it's being divvied out amongst the entire family, and so there's very little chance that Joe Biden himself wouldn't know about all these things happening in his own family.
Especially when there's pictures of him with many of Hunter Biden's business associates.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, we have enough evidence to say that, Joe Biden himself is a criminal. He's not the kind old man that you.
There's a forest fire's worth of smoke in the area.
Yes.
It's just a matter of finding the fire.
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem like it's going to take long.
I'm sure we'll get to it at some point.
And that could explain why Hunter Biden is suing the laptop repair guy.
And hold on, correct me if I'm wrong, but that information about the records connecting the Biden family to CCP, so China money, that came because of Congress, because we have control of the House.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All kinds of conspiracy theories are finally being verified true because the records are being released to the public. We did not have that before.
No longer conspiracy theories, but conspiracy fact.
Indeed.
Yeah, and Hunter Biden suing the laptop repair guy because of invasion of privacy, even though he dropped off the laptop to be repaired so that he could recover the data that's on the laptop. And
it's like, you gave me the computer to get the data, and then you never picked it up.
If you're stoned out of your mind, if you're not stoned out of your mind when you drop off a computer, you'd realize that on the terms and conditions that you're signing and the explanation that the guy gives you, they would tell you that we're going to save as much data as we can off of this and put it on a drive, and then we'll copy it from that drive onto a new thing to make sure it stays what it's supposed to be, and we'll keep a copy just in case something is corrupted, you can come back and get it fixed.
And then there's some kind of a...
And also there's a clause that if you abandon your equipment there, after a certain period of time, they can do with it whatever they want.
Yes, It becomes property of the store owner, which is exactly what happened. And since he saw the contents of the thing, because he was authorized to look at the contents to save the contents.
And he was saving the contents.
Sounds like Hunter Biden doesn't have a case.
He first sent it to the FBI, heard nothing from them in over a year, and then took one of the copies he had and gave it to Rudy Giuliani and others because he realized the FBI is doing nothing on it. And that's when it became a scandal.
Yeah.
The FBI sat on it for a year before the elections.
Well, isn't that convenient?
Yeah.
Well, it's a good thing we don't live in a banana republic.
But if he sues this guy and successfully wins the case, his laptop cannot be used as evidence in other things.
Yeah, if Hunter Biden is successful in this lawsuit.
Hunter Biden is successful. However, him doing this opens him up to all kinds of exploration.
Yeah.
So it's a double-edged sword, and mostly it's a sharper edge towards him.
Yeah.
Congratulations, you played yourself.
So that's the real story.
I'm self-burn. Those are rare.
So what you're saying is that Joe Biden used his political position for personal gain at the expense of the American people.
Only multiple times.
Many times in a systematic way.
Yes.
Well, I am
Is it
pretty
illegal?
sure...
Yes. Is it impeachable? Yes. Is that why we need to impeach him? Not exactly. It's mostly because he is extremely compromised.
Well, it's a good thing Biden isn't going after his political opponents.
Well, he's technically not, because the federal government has dropped its investigation and charges against Donald Trump. So this is just New York being New York and the insufferable a-holes that they can be.
Until Florida refuses to extradite him and they send in the FBI to force them to extradite him.
Which would be awkward because the FBI has already said there's nothing there.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
again, going over, so we're talking about the Trump announced that he was going to be arrested, I believe today.
But that's not happening.
He said he was going to be indicted today.
The jury isn't meeting until Wednesday to...
Okay, so something is
make that
happening in the
decision.
near future.
Yes.
And I believe the trumped up charges, again, pun intended, that would be a good name for an episode.
Trumped up charges.
All the other kids with their trumped up kicks.
Oh, that is
Better
dark
run,
side.
better run,
That is a dark
faster than
song.
the Donald. That's gonna be our first music video.
All the W on that one.
I'm sure I signed up for
We
that one.
just need to get an auto tuner.
Nah. We got the little sound thingy. We're fine. That's all we need.
So correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of the charges that the New York is trying to charge Trump with is that he paid Stormy Daniel hush money, I believe, with campaign finance funds.
That's what they're alleging.
That's
yes.
what they're alleging. Even though that would be a misdemeanor, and the statute of limitation. This occurred in what, 2017 or something like that.
6 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. And the statute of limitations on that is like
It's 2 years for a misdemeanor, and my understanding is that this particular crime would be considered a misdemeanor because it's just a campaign finance.
even if it was a felony,
the felony is a 5-year
there's a
statute
5-year statute of limits.
limitations. So either way, even if they can charge him with a felony, the statute of limitations has passed. So the case is extremely weak. This is clearly just politically motivated. And to what you said, Trevor, Biden isn't technically going after him, but it just sounds to me, because this is 100% politically motivated, it just sounds to me like the lower systems are doing the bidding of the higher systems, but the higher systems have what's that called? Plausible deniability,
more or less.
where they basically say
our hands are tied.
Wouldn't it be so great if someone could arrest Trump, but I don't have the authority to do that, and then a lower court takes care of it for him. So
Yeah.
Basically.
I'm
Also ignore that this whole case was dismissed almost immediately when it happened. Because Stormy,
by who?
By the courts that looked at it, because Stormy Daniels broke the law in spilling the beans.
This question has already been asked and answered for this case.
Yeah. Because it was a legal thing that she did to keep quiet.
Because it was a, what do you call it, a non-disclosure agreement?
Yes, something like
Yes.
that. And so she disclosed, which means she broke that agreement, which means she broke the law of that agreement, which means that it doesn't matter because she's the one that broke the law, not
Donald Trump.
Trump. So that's why the case almost immediately was thrown out.
So let me get this straight. So even if it was a felony, it would be invalid because of the statute of limitations. If it was a misdemeanor, same thing. And also, the crime itself is not valid in the first place because he's not the one that broke the law.
Like I said, a banana republic if you can keep it.
This is not politically motivated at all. It's just, you know, they're trying to keep the priorities of the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely what's going on. Or they are corrupt.
Pretty
All
much.
of the above.
I picked door number 2.
Door number 2. Yes, sir. So, yeah.
Moving on, how extradition generally works between states. I don't remember this from the Bushel.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of legalese on the exact process of how extraditing a fleeing fugitive.
Essentially, one state makes a request to the other state can either accept or deny it. And then once the state accepts or denies it, it then goes to a court in the state that then has to determine whether or not extradition is necessary.
Because it's being... so this is what you were saying about how DeSantis has to like approve the prosecution
Both
of
governors
Trump.
have to approve of
both
the extradition.
both governors have to approve of it. And then once both governors approve of it, the state of Florida actually has to approve of it
That's
too,
from
I believe.
findlaw.com.
Through a court.
Through a court,
if you
yeah.
want to get really into the weeds of how that works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things that have to happen in Florida for him to be extradited, which none of it'll happen.
And it's
So-
also extra interesting because this is all about somebody that flees a state to another state, because it's in the Constitution about extraditing criminals from one state to another because they flee to that state. Donald Trump didn't flee to Florida.
He moved.
He moved to Florida, not because he was escaping the stuff in New York, because they prosecuted him for that after he left New York.
Yeah.
Well, he broke the law. No. You dropped all that stuff. You said he's in the clear. So, yeah. Yeah, that's a big nothing burger that they're trying to fill with all kinds of slime. Yeah. And then Ramaswamy, basically...
He's the third Republican candidate that has declared. Is that right?
That is officially declared,
Yeah.
Yes. He talked about how it's a national disaster if Trump is actually indicted and all this stuff. And yeah. Just draws comparisons of how Democrats are stupid. If the roles were switched with like John Kerry or whatever.
Yeah, sounds like I would agree with them.
Yeah. And then DeSantis, he did take the opportunity to kind of do a slight jab at Trump, which is a first for him, where he
Really?
he says something about I can't speak to paying off a porn star for anything. So that was DeSantis's probably first public gut punch to an opponent. Other than that, he said he's not going to get in the way, and then a follow-up from, I think it was Charlie Kirk, followed up with him to find out exactly what it meant. And he said that he's not going to cooperate with New York.
Yeah.
So it's all asinine.
Yeah, no, it's true. Trump is not known to be Captain Monogamy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, but in that, like I said in the Bushel, he pivoted to an actual topic that should concern every American, is that the Florida legislature is looking to change their uniform commercial code to expressly forbid the use of central bank digital currency as money within Florida. So basically eliminating Federal Reserve power within Florida if they try to switch to a digital currency instead of
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna briefly talk about a digital currency in the segment today.
Yes. And he just talks more about
that's
how important that is.
That's
for people
really
to actually
good.
pay attention.
So a digital currency. I haven't gone really into the weeds on digital currency, but my understanding of what a digital currency is that it's basically replacing our current banking system with software.
They'll try to sell it like a Bitcoin thing.
Yeah.
But the thing with Bitcoin is it's decentralized. There's no central governing power over it.
Yeah.
And Bitcoin is not programmable. Whereas what they want to do with central bank digital currency is have a programmable currency.
Yeah.
And
so
what that means is if they really go gung-ho on the ESG stuff, they can apply ESG standards to your currency.
Yeah.
You've already bought 10 pounds of beef this week. You don't need another pound.
Yeah, and they would be able to track every single dollar or cent really to who owns it and what they're even buying, and create some kind of a ESG score based off of what you're buying, how you're using your money, and potentially punish you for it's a whole thing.
Yeah, block your finances so you can't buy things because
it's a whole can of
violates
worms.
stuff.
We're not talking about that specifically in the segment today, but it's definitely related. So maybe another day we can have a segment on digital currency.
And then the banks collapsing, like I said, it's tied into that digital currency stuff.
So, who wants to give the rundown of why the banking system is secure or not so much?
Well, they're just bailing everyone out. You know?
So, who do you blame for SVB failing, Mike or Trevor?
Yes. The bank itself and the investors and the Treasury. Did I miss?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of validity to that. The way that I would explain it, let me look at the clips that I sent. Today. So, Trevor, could you play that clip on the first email that I sent, the banking system in a nutshell?
Banking system in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's a YouTube clip, so you'll get it up on the big screen for me.
With the Stooges?
Yes. This, my friends, is the banking system, or really our money system in a nutshell.
Let's see if it'll let me. I don't think it'll let me full screen.
How about the $20 you owe me? Oh, yeah? Well, I only got 10, so here's 10, I owe you 10. Thanks. Hey, Mo, you owe me 20. Well, here's 10, I'll owe you 10. You owe me 20. Here's 10, I owe you 10. Here's the 10 I owe you. Here's the 10 I owe you. Here's the 10 I owe you. Good, now we're all even. Speaking of...
Yep.
So that's basically our money system in a nutshell.
I did not think he said bucks with a B in that the first time I heard it.
Well,
I was thinking about something completely different.
I've no more bucks to give.
The reason we call dollars bucks is because back in the day, a deer skin was worth exactly $1, and so they called it a buck.
The more you know.
So that's where that comes from. Anyway, that's not important. So basically, that's the banking system in a nutshell. If you replace the hey, you owe me this amount of money, and replace that with a good or service, basically the way our money system works is you multiply that by 1 million. And every time you make a transaction, you provide a good or service. And then when you spend the money that you earned from that, you are better off. Because anytime you buy anything, presumably you're buying it because it would make you better off than the money that you just spent. And multiply that by 1 million. Anyway, so how that ties into Silicon Valley Bank is my understanding is the reason Silicon Valley Bank failed is basically because of government spending. Because if you suddenly add millions or billions or trillions of dollars into that, that circle that is 1 million people long, just like the Stooges, instead of being 3 people long, it's 1 million people long. Suddenly there is inflation. And what does the Fed do when there's inflation?
They print more money.
They print more money.
And make it worse.
It only makes it worse.
Yeah. And so in 2020, when they printed all this money and gave all kinds of money to people through the just the checks that they handed out and the PPP loans. And Silicon Valley Bank specifically, they specialize in small businesses. And so the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Program, made small businesses totally flushed with cash. And so in Silicon Valley Bank, their deposits balance sheet went from something like 50 billion to like 200 billion after COVID.
Just a small jump.
So what I'm hearing is it was Trump's fault.
I mean,
Well, I'll get into that in just a minute. That's part
you're
of
not wrong.
that's part of the
You're
article.
not wrong, Walter. You're just an asshole.
Yes. Continue on.
Yeah. So suddenly, Silicon Valley Bank was just flushed with deposits. They had so much money all of a sudden. They increased their balance sheet size by like 4 times. And so when you get tons of money, you have to ask yourself, what are you going to do with that money? And I mean, the long and short of it
Pay
is
off
that
debt
they decided to invest in bonds because historically, government bonds, because historically that's the safest place to put your money. But what happens to bonds when they raise interest rates?
Oh, they're less valuable.
Trevor. Yeah, they're
Dang it.
less valuable. So
Dang
they
darn
invested
dang it.
in these bonds because they were flushed with cash when interest rates were low. And then interest rates rose, which made their bonds less valuable, which shouldn't be a huge deal because when you invest in a bond, as long as you hang on to that bond until maturity, you're not going to lose any money.
Right.
But if you suddenly need that cash, then you're going to lose money.
Oops.
And so because of inflation, which was caused by government spending, the interest rates rose, and so their bonds were less valuable. So instead of their balance sheet being worth 200 billion, it was suddenly worth, I don't know, I'm just speculating here, but like 170 billion, let's say.
And instead of being worth $1 per bond or whatever, or $100
It was worth
per
less than
bond,
$1.
It was worth 75, 80 cents
Sure, yeah.
per bond.
And again, that's because of the interest rates, because you could buy a bond with the higher interest rates with a higher return. And so the bonds that were left, they had, there was only like a 3% interest rate on it. Those became way less valuable because people expected to make that, 8% or whatever the interest rates are today on that bond. And so, yeah. And the thing is what happens to businesses when suddenly it's harder to borrow? They're going to take out their cash. And where is all their cash? It's tied up in Silicon Valley Bank. And so because of the conditions of the market, because businesses were flushed with cash in 2020, 2021, and so forth, and then interest rates rose because of inflation, and again, all of this is caused by government spending, suddenly borrowing more money was not as much of an option for these small businesses that do business with Silicon Valley Bank. So a lot of these businesses withdrew cash, granted over time, from Silicon Valley Bank. So their balance sheet, which like increased fourfold over just a couple years, was also decreasing slowly, but certainly faster than usual. And so they needed the cash to, provide those deposits. And so they didn't have enough cash. And so they announced that they would sell their bonds, like all of their bonds, at a loss. And as soon as that happened, it collapsed the whole system because
then everyone.
Exactly, because everyone knew something was wrong. And so everyone tried to withdraw their deposits. And what's even worse is only, I believe it's 250,000 is officially guaranteed from that. And Silicon Valley Bank, something like 95% of their customers had larger than 250,000.
Because they're predominantly
and
businesses.
So that was especially a signal that if there's something wrong, I need to get all of my funds out of here because anything above 250,000 is not guaranteed by the bank.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway, that
is
what happened.
Thanks to the crash in 2008, the lender is, or the, you put money in the bank. The bank now owns that money. It is not your money. When you sign the contract and all this stuff to deposit your money in the bank. You are giving the bank the money, and the bank is taking the money as its own because it's money, which is why the bank is allowed to do whatever it wants to do with the money to try to invest, and then gives you some sort of fraction of percentage back. Very, very small fraction. So, thanks to 2008, you become the lender of last resort, which translates to the bank has to pay everyone before you. You are the last person that gets paid when the bank hits a crisis. This SVB thing, lender of last resort, businesses and all that stuff that have the wherewithal to know all this stuff, know that they have to get their money out before they're the last resort. And so there's a run on the bank. So in an attempt to fix what happened in 2008, they made the situation worse because everyone's going to run on the banks when there starts to be an issue because they're not going to get their money back, even though it's FDIC insured.
The FDIC only insures up to
$250,000.
Yep.
And our Secretary of Treasury, Janet Yellen, has already told Congress that, well, yes, that's what it says, but
we're going to bail out everybody.
We're going to just bail everyone out instead. We're just abandoning everything. Okay, yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
No consequences.
So anyway, that's one perspective on why everything failed, is basically because of government spending. But another thing is SVB and their shall we say, their management of risk. Let's talk about that for a second. So SVB has been innovative in all the wrong things. Trevor, could you pull up the New York Post article from my second email?
Post. That one.
Yeah, so I'll just sum up this article. It basically said that Silicon Valley Bank didn't have a risk manager, like a head of risk, for something like 9 months.
And then
when they did hire a head of risk, let's see. She was
Jay Ursapa. That chick?
Jay Ursafa, and she calls herself a queer person of color. And I wasn't able to confirm this, but I did read in one of the articles that she is accused of spending all of her time on like diversity things and like organizing Pride Month and crap like that instead of doing her actual job. And so it also stands to reason that if they hired her, not because of her risk expertise, but because of her, what do you call it? Her diversity check marks, that is definitely a misalignment of priorities. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So again, that's just speculation on my part. But I believe this is that screenshot, I believe, is her LinkedIn profile. I actually couldn't find her actual LinkedIn profile.
I think it's because she closed it.
Yeah, it was purged from the internet or whatever. But yeah, she won't shut up about like diversity and crap like that. And so
you're
the
saying
allegation is that she was focused on diversity and not on, risk.
So you're alleging that if your hiring focus is on what color somebody's hair is, instead of their qualifications, you might run into trouble with your business.
Yeah, and I'm also saying that, like, this is just me speculating, like, I'm not saying that I know for sure that she's bad at risk, but one thing I will say is that if your philosophy is all about diversity and you hire all kinds of diverse people that suck at their jobs.
I took a risk and it was calculated, but man, am I bad at math.
I'm going to suspect it's because they didn't hire the most qualified person. And so focusing on diversity hires for its own sake actually creates more, shall we say, prejudice. Because people are like, okay, if you're a diversity hire and you suck at your job, I bet I know why you suck at your job.
That line has never fit more perfectly than just now.
So anyway, so that's another thing on this. But what are the Democrats blaming it all on.
It's Donald Trump's fault.
It's Donald Trump, just like everything. Just like all the crying toddlers in the world. They're blaming it on Donald Trump. It's all Trump's fault. Now, I tried to look into this. Apparently, there was a bill from 2018 that deregulated to some degree the Dodd-Frank Act that put all kinds of regulations. And what it did is it deregulated smaller banks just so they can compete better with larger banks, I guess. And that's the allegation. They're saying it's Trump's fault because there was a bill that was passed during Trump's tenure. And
really, that's the thing they're pointing to, not the fact that he's the one that signed off on the PPP loans.
I know.
The thing that actually caused the problem was signed by Trump.
I'm not going to argue with that. That's true.
I'm just saying.
My big criticisms of Trump is his spending. So yeah, that's absolutely true.
I mean, I can agree with the idea that it's partially Trump's fault because he signed the PPP loans into being, and he signed the stuff for COVID,
and he pushed the shutdowns,
and he
made
pushed
that
the
situation
shutdowns
in the first place,
and made all of that stuff in the first place. Yes, that is partially his fault. It is not his fault for what they're saying because what they're saying is asinine.
Yeah. So just to be clear, this is what a nonpartisan opinion actually looks like. It's like, no, you're right. Trump is to blame, but you got it wrong.
But yes, but also no.
Yeah, because even Frank, that the Dodd-Frank thing's named after, even pointed out.
He supported the deregulation of
He supported
banks,
the deregulation. Then he said, yeah, that's not what caused this collapse.
But anyway, I'm also going to point to the fact that 17 Democrat senators were in favor of the deregulation of the bank.
Yes, but it
was a bipartisan effort.
But it wasn't Elizabeth Warren, so...
Yeah. One thing I will say
who
is
the biggest voice.
Apparently, Tim Kaine was asked if he regretted voting for this. This is an article that was dated March 14th, 2023, so just a few days ago. Senator Tim Kaine, he was Hillary Clinton's running mate. He basically said, the reason I voted for that bill is my community bank really needed it. So the long and short of it is that deregulation, it helped smaller banks compete with larger banks.
Yeah.
And they believed, even according to Democrat judgment, caused the smaller banks to be able to compete better with the larger banks because those regulations...
Also, fun to point out, the regulation was focused on smaller banks and making smaller banks better. And it was a big bank that collapsed, not a small...
Well, they were a small bank that took advantage of all that stuff until they became a big bank.
Yeah.
So they did exactly what that regulation was trying to do, is help small banks compete with big banks, which SVB did and became a big bank and then crashed.
So anyway, I will admit that I wasn't able to research the entirety of exactly what that 2018 bill did that deregulated the banks. But my argument here debunking that it was all Trump's fault is that according to a bunch of Democrat senators, it was a deregulation that was needed.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, that's not what caused it. It was the PPP loans.
I'm not going to argue with that. Government spending, which, yeah, the PPP loans were a big part of that.
Please view chart that we stopped on earlier.
The PPP loans was a big reason why SVB's balance sheet was so massive after COVID.
Yeah.
Here's for everyone that thinks that Trump walks on water after listening to me just rag on him for 5 minutes.
Emotional damage.
He's been waiting all episode to squeeze that in somewhere.
Have been.
So anyway, we haven't figured out who our target audience is because we rail on both sides.
We'll see if you...
I have no target audience. I don't care. I just want to be right.
That's our secret, Keith. Everyone is the target.
Everyone's the target.
He got it.
I'm an equal opportunity hater. Yeah, that's the funny thing is in this day and age though, everybody's like, hey, if you disagree with one thing somebody says, you hate them. And no, that's bullshit. You can disagree with literally anyone on literally anything and not hate them.
Yeah, to be clear.
You know, to be clear,
yes,
Trump was a fantastic president.
Uh-huh. And to also be clear, yes, Trump is to blame for a ton of this COVID-related crap / banking.
The government
stuff.
spending, yes, that is my number
That
one
being
criticism
said-
of Trump. Absolutely.
That being said, I am excited to see if he becomes president again.
Yes. Well, the funny thing is, like, you throw out he's to blame for it. Well, in a way, yes, but he simply signed it into being. He's not necessarily the one that
He's not
really
judge,
created
jury.
it. He's
not
not
judge,
the one
jury,
that passed it in
executioner.
Congress. You know, there were hundreds of other people involved in having it done, so he's not solely to blame. He's only to blame because he was the only one that had the sole ability to say, nah.
Yeah. And
he didn't.
And while he was petitioning his entire tenure for Congress to actually secure the border, among other things, Congress was busy doing crap like that.
Yeah. Another thing I'll say about the COVID bailouts is at the time, I didn't have a strong opinion one way or another. All I could see is people like Ted Cruz who is an opinion I generally trust. He was in favor of the government spending. You know, the point is, the philosophy behind it is like, yeah, we were against spending, but because this is a crisis, we need to spend to help us get out of this crisis. And yeah, like all of the negatives are true.
Then it causes another crisis that we have to spend in order to get out of.
The only real justification they had to lean on was...
So it was a bipartisan thing.
Yes.
One thing I will say is that if we weren't spending on all this crap, we would have more spending available to get us out of crises.
Just because the large majority of people jump off of the cliff, that doesn't mean that jumping off of the cliff is a good thing to do.
If we actually listened to doctors that were actually treating
cliffs.
Any
patients
cliff.
on the front lines in 2020, we wouldn't have had to lock down the country because, well, people like Fauci, who never seen a patient in their entire career, basically, shouldn't have a say in what doctors do and do not do.
You know, if you had to sum up the entirety of the U.S. government with a single book title, I think the most fitting one would be A Series of Unfortunate Events.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it is. It's one thing's led to another's led to another's led to another, and it just keeps compounding. I mean, we're still dealing with repercussions of policy that they passed
in 2008 and beyond.
We're still dealing with crap that friggin'
The Patriot Act, 2001.
2001. Further back, Franklin, friggin' Roosevelt. We're dealing with shit that he put in.
Wilson.
Hoover. All of them. Coolidge. We're dealing with stuff that all of them did. Still. It's still compounding. And it's been compounding for decades now.
And when it compounds to the point of failure, we don't let it fail because it's too big to fail. We bail everything out so it doesn't fail like it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Which makes it compound even more.
Right.
And so now here we sit.
But heaven forbid that we end Social Security and start trying to dig our asses out of the hole we're in with a little pain now and a lot of relief later.
Too many people rely on Social Security. Oh. And
what was the argument against Social Security when they first tried to implement it? That people would become dependent on it? Weird.
And it was originally sold as, we sent the boys overseas to fight a war that they didn't want to be part of, that we artificially created. So let's make sure their widows back home have something to cover them because their breadwinner is no longer alive. That was the initial selling point for Social Security.
Yeah.
It is no longer what Social Security is used for. In fact, if you have a soldier that dies overseas in combat line of duty, good luck.
Yeah.
Is the current policy. Yeah. Any Hooters.
We'll give him a 21-gun salute at his funeral.
And we'll fold a flag for him.
And we'll fold a flag for him, which you can have.
And you can frame it.
And you can buy another one. if you want to.
Yeah. We'll pay for the casket or something.
Yeah. Just about.
What about any of his retirement social stuff? Yeah, see, there's this paperwork you got to fill out, and you might fill out the wrong form if you do that. Good luck.
Yeah.
We'll have a VA, someone from the VA will contact you, help you with that.
All right, going
Sorry,
back
Keith,
to
where'd
the bushel.
Where'd we leave off?
Yeah, so moving on, let's see. So I think we only got through the first article in the banking system is secure. Newsom failed to disclose that SVB is his bank. Yeah, that's illegal. Newsom sucks. He's corrupt. Yeah, we get it.
Yeah. He's a Biden wannabe.
I think we covered Iceland jails their corrupt bankers when these sorts of things happen. Which, yeah, I'm in favor of that with dubious things. And I think that brings me into the lefty opinion that I have had a tendency to have. Yeah, so I've actually traditionally been pretty in favor of the Fed bailing out depositors, not the banks themselves. And the reason for that is I think that the Fed, it does give confidence to people putting their money in the banking system. Because the great thing about the banking system is that once it's in the system, the money can still be used. So it circulates the economy when it has money in the bank and people have confidence in the bank. But our system is largely based on confidence. As we just saw, when everyone tries to pull out their money all at once, the bank is screwed. And so the Fed, being able to assure that everyone will get their money does give confidence in the banking system. And that is something that I've traditionally been totally in favor of. But the problem is... I will say that I've always been in favor of the Fed having, being linked to a gold standard, So if they inflate the currency, then they have to at least admit that the value of gold will therefore go up. So they have to admit to how much to the extent they're lowering the value of the dollar.
A physical
because
asset.
They have to produce a physical asset
Yes.
if someone asks for one.
Yes.
Because back in the 50s or whatever, you could literally exchange $10 for an ounce of gold back then.
Yeah. And one thing kind of back to that digital currency thing. So central bank digital currency, it's not backed by anything.
Yes.
Whereas Bitcoin actually is backed by something.
It is?
It's backed by there's
limited
only
supply.
There's only X number of Bitcoins available. So, and then with a Bitcoin, you can actually put your Bitcoin on a thumb drive and carry it around with you.
Yeah.
A digital currency from the central bank, from the Fed, nah. You can't do that.
Yeah.
It's basically
in the cloud always.
Yes.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah, so what I'm finding is...
the interesting thing about that is that that's pretty much already what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you carry around cash and pay for things with cash, you're essentially already using a digital dollar every time you swipe a credit card or a debit card.
Which is why I fear it's going to be such an easy sell for people.
Yeah.
It's what you're doing already with your credit cards and your debit cards. Oh, well, if that's the case, then it's fine. No. Because right now, it's private companies that are behind your credit cards, your debit cards, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And if they deny your purchase of something, even though you have money in the bank for it, and it's not an illegal purchase, you can sue the pants off of them.
Yep.
Whereas if the central bank denies the swipe of your card, even though you have enough digital dollars to buy the item, you can't sue them.
Yeah, it was too much. They could do that to you with a digital currency because, I don't know, you weren't climate friendly enough or something.
You
Your ESG score isn't high enough.
You can't buy that much ammo. Well, can I buy one box? You already bought 10 boxes.
Yeah.
Right, but I want another box. Nope.
So again, we'll talk
You've
more
reached your limit.
about the digital currency probably in another episode. But anyway, so something that caused me to kind of change my mind a little bit. I'm not totally sold on just let the banks fail.
You got
quite yet.
You got crowded on the subject.
Yeah, you could say that. I saw something that changed my mind a little bit. Apparently, there were talks of the bigger banks bailing out Silicon Valley Bank, so the private banks bailing out Silicon Valley Bank. And their incentive to do that was basically they would buy the assets of Silicon Valley Bank for a deal, and then they would get the assets of Silicon Valley Bank. They would restore the depositors. And again, because the only thing that was wrong with Silicon Valley Bank's business model is they didn't have enough cash on hand at the time.
Right.
So if they produced the cash that they need, then they could restore the depositors and still get the same business, income that Silicon Valley Bank was producing.
And then Silicon Valley Bank would have to repay those banks. Yes.
Yeah, and like that
That's
is
a brilliant
very
idea.
compelling of why we don't actually need the Fed, because my position now is the Fed has way too much power, but I do like the idea of having like a bailout of last resort.
In order to have some sort of working society, society has to have an agreed upon way to pay for goods and services.
Yeah.
And that's where something like a centralized entity comes into play to say this is the thing that translates to transactions.
That being said, when a private company, such as a bank, misuses funding, it should suffer the consequences of that.
Yes.
And by that, I mean they should fail, they should collapse, and the people in charge should go to prison for what they did to the people that trusted them with their money.
For dubious practices, yeah.
Yeah. For
right.
Just like an investor would go to jail if they make poor investments.
So, for example, in the 2008 crash, they were giving mortgages to people they knew couldn't pay it back. Like that is obviously an example of moral hazard where they were doing something, taking risks that they wouldn't normally take because they knew the government would bail them out.
Yes.
That is moral hazard at its finest. And yeah, I believe that should be a crime. I don't think I've looked into it enough to know exactly what crime I would pin the Silicon Valley Bank stuff on, because like from what I am seeing, they just invested in a bond, which should be secure. So they put their confidence in the government, but then the interest rates rose.
Which should be a crime.
Got him.
There it is. Found it.
The
ones in this case that should be going to jail are Congress.
Yeah, I mean,
It's, that
our monetary
all of
system that spends all the money without
And the
having
Fed.
the money.
because let's be honest, this crash was caused by inflation, which was caused by the Fed.
Yeah.
So the one that's now doing the bailout is actually the one that caused the problem to begin with, and they're now causing another problem that will cause
more problems
in the future. They should be shut down and they should be going to jail because they are doing bad practices that will lead to more issues.
If you owned a business and you owned insurance, the insurance company covering that business, and you lit a fire in that business to burn the business down, and then turn to the insurance company and have the insurance company pay for the insurance on that fire damage, you would go to jail.
Yes. For insurance fraud.
That's exactly what the Fed's done.
Sure. Yeah.
And the Fed is something that shouldn't exist in the first place, but Congress, like I pointed out with our senators suck, Congress is too lazy to actually do its job, so it just exports its job to other entities, thereby giving Congress basically no power to do what it's supposed to do. So when the Fed is out of control, Congress doesn't really have control to control the Fed because they've given all that control to the Fed.
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say about the Fed again, my traditional opinion has been that the Fed should exist, but it should be constrained by a gold standard. The fact that private companies were willing to bail out the larger banks, that's very compelling that we don't actually need a Fed. And there's no question that the Fed has way too much power because there's nothing stopping them from printing all of the money that they want. And that's a horrifying prospect.
The funny thing is, so this whole bank thing that you're talking about is the perfect example of how the free market would function if the government would leave it alone. Because anytime something fails, like this bank failing, there comes an opportunity for a different business.
Yes.
And so bailouts, you call it a bailout, but it's not really a bailout, it's a buyout.
Yes.
The big bank comes in, they buy the other bank for pennies on the dollar. They reimburse all of the bank's customers so that the customer base will stay. And then they take over the profits of the bank that has failed.
Yeah.
And that's what happens in the free market with businesses. When a business fails, when it falls apart and it isn't bailed out by a government entity that has deemed it too large to fail, another business comes in, picks it up for pennies on the dollar, fixes what was wrong with it, what caused it to fail, and takes over its revenue.
Yeah. So I'm very intrigued by that. One thing I will say is there's no question there are drawbacks to that system because ultimately the big banks could fail and then we'd all be screwed. And that's bad.
No. The free market the free market would say that model doesn't work, but this guy is still working. Or
that presupposes that there would be another bank still functioning though. But if
there isn't another bank still functioning, then banks in general don't work, and it's a bad idea.
Which is why Bitcoin was so successful, because people recognize, especially after 2008, holy crap, this whole system is rigged and messed up. We need something that's separate.
Well,
from
but
all
the
of that.
Bitcoin market just crashed,
and it rebounds, and it crashes, and it rebounds, and it crashes,
anyway,
and it rebounds. That's the Bitcoin.
And so that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that those are the natural consequences of the free market, but there's no question there are drawbacks to it.
Yes.
And so the question is...
It's a trade-off.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. And so I've traditionally been on the side of, yes, we need to have a bailout of like what I believe it's called a lender of last resort.
Yeah.
That is the Fed that bails these banks out in case they fail. And that gives consumers the confidence.
Here's your trade-off on that, though.
Right.
Because, yes, you have... If you have a free market, you have a little bit of a yo-yo.
Yeah.
It yo-yos a little bit.
You have dangerous
liberty. It will move. It varies a lot more than if there's a centralized something that'll bail it out. But it only moves a little bit. That's the thing. It moves more often.
Yeah.
Moves a lot more often, but it only moves a little bit. It's a lot more consistent. I'm not
going to argue with that. Yeah.
When you have something big, centralized, like the Fed, it doesn't move as often. It very rarely moves. But when it moves, it's catastrophic. And you have people that lose...
Huh? You're still talking about the free market?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, like, looking at the bank bailouts, right? So, if you have all these banks, all the cryptocurrency, whatever, you're looking at these things. Cryptocurrency fails, it rebounds. It fails, it rebounds. It fails, it rebounds. But it moves in a consistent manner.
Yeah.
Banks, they don't fail often. I mean, we have a few banks that fail every year. That does happen. It happens, every year.
Yeah.
Small
There's
banks.
A list.
Yeah, small banks collapse every year. It happens. But once every 10, 20 years, a big bank will collapse. And when that happens, and the Fed has to bail people out, our inflation goes up, which affects everyone, not just the people that are at the small bank or at the bank that's yo-yoing.
Yes.
It affects the entire country. It affects the entire world because our inflation is a primary currency. So it affects the entire world when something like that happens.
Yeah.
And that's because we've centralized it in the Fed.
Yes.
If you don't have it centralized in the Fed, then a bank here and there yo-yoing, it doesn't matter in the big scheme of things. it doesn't affect anything. But when something like this happens with a Fed centralized thing, it's catastrophic. You have businesses that go out of business because they can't do anything, or you have to have a government entity step in and bail it out, and that causes more inflation, which causes more problems, which causes more pain further down the road.
Yeah, and so that's exactly the trade-off that I'm saying. So I came into this discussion with a more lefty opinion than I have now. Because the free markets, we're talking about bailing out Silicon Valley Bank, I'm moving more to the right on this. One thing I will say is I've been very impressed by how low inflation has been keeping with the Fed having too much power the last couple of decades.
Because they have to.
Basically since the 70s, right? Was it the 70s that the big inflation happened?
Oh, yeah, where it was like 20-something.
Yeah, where it was massive. Yeah. Ridiculous.
Yeah, so that was definitely one big black spot on the Fed. And what's happening now is a big black mark on the Fed.
Yeah.
But there's nothing constraining the Fed from just ruining our dollar. And we're going to talk about that in a minute here.
Yeah. So one thing before we move on from that. So this is this is a chart for Bitcoin.
Hold on. I want to finish my thought.
Finish your thought.
You have to contrast what has happened so far, so the inflation that happened in the 70s, what's happening now, and the possibility that the Fed is going to abuse its power so much that it's going to destroy the dollar, which is totally a possibility, and contrast that with like the Great Depression. The Great Depression was a free market thing, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
No.
Well,
that was government involvement.
No, that was the beginning of the Fed, actually. Yeah. That was actually like one of the very first things that the Fed did.
Yeah,
was the Great Depression.
The point is,
they tried to artificially.
The point is
fix
what
things.
happened at the Great Depression. Like those deposits were not insured, and so everyone lost their money.
Yeah, which is why the Fed then started insuring, which does nothing but kick the football down the road.
Well, yeah, I would say that it does offer confidence in the banking system by ensuring that. But yeah, you have to contrast that with. But how much power the Fed has and the way things are going, they are clearly abusing their power. And so overall, I'm saying let's just let the natural laws play out instead of giving the Fed all this power.
Right. And
so
I would argue that having the confidence in that kind of system is in and of itself an issue. Like you shouldn't ever have complete confidence in any system.
Again, so would you just take your money out and just leave it under your mattress?
At this point,
yes. That's what I'm saying.
But no, rather than putting it in banks, put it in investments, put it in hard assets, put it in things that you can actually tangibly use. Take your money and rather than putting it in a bank, put it in a life insurance policy that you can then be your own bank. Put it in a house that you can then rent and make more revenue. Put it in a hard asset that you can actually use to increase your own money. That's like, you need to diversify these things. You shouldn't be trusting the banking system with all of your money. If you're trusting the banking system with all of your money at any given point in your life, then you are completely beholden to whatever happens to them.
Yep.
Period. And that's the same thing with anything. If you put all of your confidence in the business that you work for, that it's never going to go out of business, is never going to fire you, then you're completely beholden to that business staying in business forever. You should never count on the fact that somebody else is going to always be there in the capacity that you're using them for. You should always have an alternative plan that you can utilize to keep your life moving forward. Never completely trust any institution.
Fair. Yeah, because every system ultimately comes down to authority, and authority can be abused. And so the only alternative to that is natural law. And so I'm saying the drawbacks of the free market, just letting banks fail and that sort of thing, is it does put less confidence in the banking system. And the banking system is good because it allows people to deposit their money. That money can then be lent out to other people, and it keeps the economy moving. I think that is helpful for the free markets, and that's very good. But as we've been seeing recently, the Fed can abuse its power, and it has the possibility of destroying the dollar. And so because we just... So I guess the system that I would be theoretically in favor of is having an authority that has so much integrity that it will keep to its objectives of keeping low unemployment and inflation low, but unfortunately,
which arguably will never exist.
Human beings cannot be trusted to keep that integrity.
In a perfect world, you could establish something like that would work.
Take that
unfortunately,
as a given,
we don't.
If you take that as a given that human beings would always abuse that power eventually, and given how catastrophic it would be if we lost the dollar, like that is a century. Even if it went well for a century, it would not be worth it to centralize that power if it would mean losing the dollar. And that is the system.
Welcome to the Conservative Party.
It's one of the only leftist opinions I've ever had. Like, I've always been against things like auditing the Fed or eliminating the Fed or whatever.
And now here you are.
I'm kind of coming around.
Yeah, so
now you're seeing the error in your ways.
I like to think I've been holding on to this opinion because it's made me feel that I'm like objective or whatever. But yeah, once I
this puts me in the middle. There is no middle.
I was like, no, the conservative side is better. We do need to eliminate the Fed. That will have consequences, no question.
Yeah.
But it would stave off the possibility of the dollar failing.
And that's the funniest thing about it is that's the way that they get you. Because once they get something implemented, that's always the case. Yeah. Once they have something they want in position, then there's always a consequence for taking it away. There's always somebody that'll be hurt by it. So then you can't take it away without hurting someone. So then you're the bad guy if you take it away. Social Security is the perfect example. That is one of the worst things that has ever happened to our country. Ever.
Yeah.
It is atrocious, the things that it has done to us economically. Absolutely atrocious.
When it was implemented, wasn't the life expectancy after 65 like 3 years?
Yeah.
Or something like that. And now it's like 20 years.
Yeah. And so, but now we can't take it away because that's what the old people live on. And you want to take away grandma's livelihood and all this, and so then it's like, well, you have to keep paying into it, and it's completely unsustainable,
especially given our
to the point where our generation, the millennial generation, is paying into it, but it is so bad that there won't be anything for the millennials out of it.
Yeah, it used to be like 8 to 1. Paying into Social Security and one person getting paid out, and now it's something like 1 to 4.
Yeah.
And so that's absolutely not sustainable.
No, I think it's like 1 to 2 almost, like 1 to 3 and almost 1 to 2 or something like that. Anyway, I'll have to fact check that.
But it's absolutely ridiculous, and that is literally every one of these things that they've implemented, the Fed included.
Yeah.
Because if they never implemented the Fed, they would have remained on the gold standard. If they had remained on the gold standard, our inflation wouldn't be nearly as bad as it is, for one, because they couldn't just print more money without having it backed by gold.
Yeah.
And for two, a good chunk of our economic problems just wouldn't exist. Like a good chunk.
Yeah.
Yes,
but
banks
because
would
the
get
Fed
gobbled up and all this
exists,
stuff, but it would just keep spreading around to different things.
But because the Fed exists, there's all these issues that we have to keep fixing, and the Fed keeps fixing it with money that then keeps making more problems.
That's the only thing that they can do. All they can do is print more money.
That's all they can do.
They can either
all they can do.
They can either print more money or gobble up a bunch of money via interest rates.
Yep.
And raising interest rates, every time the Fed increases interest rates, unemployment goes up.
Yes.
Every time.
Without fail. Every time.
But something that I thought of while you guys were talking was, if left to the free market, what would happen? So Bitcoin is like the only example of a free market currency that we have.
Yeah.
That's not
At the
influenced. That's not, well, it's minorly influenced because of 2020 now of its price. But Bitcoin, if we look at this handy dandy chart over time. So Bitcoin, if we exclude 2020, where, like we pointed out in that other graph,
everyone was flushed with cash.
Everyone's flushed with cash. So they're putting it, where did the free market where did people decide was the best place to put their cash?
Bitcoin. So the prices
Bitcoin,
went
because
up
they
like
saw
crazy.
the banks were saying, "Yeah, we're not able to give out cash because there's just no cash. We have a coin shortage." Yeah, how do you not have coins suddenly? Well, there's just a coin shortage.
Oh yeah, I
Why?
remember that.
Because of COVID. A virus doesn't make coins just disappear. So people were like, "Okay, yeah, no." So they took the government cash they were given and their own personal investments and put it in something that was more stable than what they were looking at the time. Now, Bitcoin, yes, it goes up and down. As you can see by this thing, there's all kinds of ups and downs. But what's the overall trend? Up. Yep. Even if you take this chunk out
And
see, right here, it levels out.
So where it is right now, when was the last time it was at that level?
When was the last time it was at what it is currently?
Yeah, what was that?
March 22nd, 2023, it's at $28,133.60.
28,000? Okay, when was the last time?
So the last time it was there would have been
Mid-June.
Mid-June, and before that would have been the other side of that spike, which would have been
January
a little
2021, December 2020.
Yeah, but between Christmas and New Year's
Of what year?
Of 2020.
2020.
Okay.
So it follows. Remember that graph we were looking at earlier that showed the
Purple graph?
Yeah, it's that exact same spot.
Boop, 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 boop.
The PPP loans. That's it.
It's
right
correlated.
There.
Yeah.
It's correlated.
Yeah. So outside of that, if left to its own accord, I don't have the purple one on that screen anymore, but looking at the purple map, the purple graph from earlier, it's almost the same. It has, see, it's got a spike there in 2018, and this purple graph has a spike in January 2019. So
yeah. So anyway.
So
my conclusion on that is I've changed my mind. We should eliminate the Fed. And the thing that caused me to change my mind is the free market can bail out banks, and also the Fed has too much power, and we can just not trust human beings with that kind of power.
Yeah, Congress needs to take that back and then put it on a standard.
Yep. I need a Sharpie sign.
I need a Sharpie sign.
But if I were to cling on to my lefty opinion, there is I would be in favor of a theoretical system where we could take the integrity of the people with that power for granted, but we can't do that with human beings. So my theoretical system is a pipe dream, much like many leftist theories.
So I was listening to
what you got there, Mike?
I'm making a Sharpie sign without a Sharpie.
He's doodling. So I was listening to an interview with Bernie something. He's the co-founder of Home
Sanders?
Depot. No, the co-founder of Home Depot.
Oh.
He's 93 years old now.
Wow.
Sharp as a tack, especially compared to our current former vice president. Which, again, is the bar is set so low, it's a tripping hazard in hell.
Got it. Slash it.
Slash it. Slash it. Slash it.
But I was listening to this interview of him talking about just how messed up the banking system is now and economics and all this stuff. And he says he wouldn't be able to start Home Depot today.
No.
Under the current stuff.
Uh-huh.
But as I was listening to him, I realized our society has grown so accustomed to not paying for anything that nobody ever pays for anything. Like, so the banker thing, they learned in 2008, we can do the worst business practice ever with our banks, and it's fine.
Again, that's moral hazard. That is a very big drawback to the Fed as it stands now. Like, the trade-off that I was thinking is that it gives people confidence in the banking system so the economy keeps rolling, but it also causes moral hazard, which causes people to take risks that they wouldn't otherwise take because they know the government would bail them out if something goes wrong.
Yes.
That's the story of 2008.
So they learned nothing from 2008.
Yeah.
At least they learned they don't get hurt.
Yeah.
With their choices from 2008. And then society as a whole has learned, well, just put it on the credit card. Just do this. Just do that. You're owed this. Society owes you this because you're this, that, or this. But in reality, there's always repercussions for what is done. People that decide to transition themselves, those that don't commit suicide and live on later on, those that realize, oh crap, this was a huge mistake, they can't go back and fix what they just did to themselves.
Yeah.
Especially if they were children at the time. Mm-hmm. So we've been raised in a society that says there's no bad consequences for anything that you do. But if you do experience something bad, it's this group's fault that something bad has happened to you. It's not your fault that something bad happened to you. It's not your fault that you can't get a job. It's not your fault that you can't afford housing. It's not your fault you can't get a new car. It's the patriarchy's fault. It's the white man's fault. It's Republicans' fault. That's what society has been raised on. And listening to this guy talk about his business and everything, he grew up in a generation where immigrants were told, this is the land of opportunity. This is the golden land. That's what his mom told him. America is the golden land. If you want to be the president, you can become the president. If you want to be a businessman, you can become a businessman. What is society told today? Not that. Especially new immigrants.
Yeah.
New immigrants are told...
The system will keep you down, racism and...
Yeah, new immigrants are told, the reason why you're here in the situation you're in is because of somebody you've never met and has never had influence over your life.
Yeah.
And because of that, you are always going to be this way.
Even though Indian Americans, I believe Egyptian Americans, do better than the average white person in America.
And Asian Americans.
Oh, yeah, and
yes.
Asian Americans in general do better than the average white person, but they're still held down by white people somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, we understand that we don't have to take responsibility. So our political leaders are always a reflection of who we are as a society. Our political leaders, they don't think there's any real repercussions for the decisions that they make. So they keep spending billions, trillions of dollars. Well, can we fix Social Security? No. If we get rid of that, it's going to destroy everything. But what about the destruction that's happening because that's your golden calf that you have to worship right now? Well, there's people that just rely on it. Oh. But when I get older and it's completely bankrupt and gone, and society's basically gone too because all these decisions, what am I supposed to rely on?
Yeah.
And a total collapse of the system is going to be extremely destructive, not just because money is now worthless or anything like that, but because we have an entire set of generations that have been raised of taking zero responsibility and have no idea how to take care of themselves. And so they're going to try to go to some person, hey, can I buy that food off you? I got $100. And they'll be laughed at. Why? Because a piece of paper is not worth the meal that they're trying to buy.
Yeah.
So I'll trade this meal for you if you got some gold. I'll trade this meal for you if you've got some ammunition. I'll trade this meal for you if you got some alcohol. I don't have any of that. I just have cash. I can't help you.
Yeah.
That is what's going to make a total collapse of the system so destructive, is people that don't know how to take responsibility as well as don't know how to hold people responsible.
Right. So,
yep. With that heartwarming note,
speaking of not paying for things, that brings us into the segment for this week. We're going to talk about modern monetary theory and how that could basically destroy society if it hasn't already.
Isn't that what we've been talking
That
about?
is what we've been talking about.
It's like, well, I thought we were already there.
I've been on that page for the last half hour.
So here's the thing: is modern monetary theory is a new theory which basically says that deficits don't matter, that we can spend as much money as we want, and the national debt wouldn't matter at all. There's a book called
that is one big pile of shit.
So
I think I've read that one.
My conspiracy about this is that there's a book called The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton. And Stephanie Kelton, she is the face of modern monetary theory. She literally wrote the book on it. And
Oh, good. I hate her.
a little bit about her resume on this is she's an academic, of course. She's a professor in economics in various
Like I said
universities.
earlier,
I hate her.
virtual things do not equate to reality.
Oh, she's a modern Marxist. Modern Marxist theory. Got it.
And so she's also worked for the government. And on December 26, 2014, Kelton was designated chief economist for the Democrat minority staff of the Senate Budget Committee, a post she held in 2015 and early 2016.
Good
So
for
in
her.
other words, she was a chief economic advisor to the Democrat minority at the time, and she was hired by none other than Bernie Sanders. And so she advised Bernie Sanders.
Oh, things make so much more sense.
So what I was jokingly saying, modern Marxist theory, I was actually correct.
Yes.
Got it.
So my conspiracy theory is that modern monetary theory has been in our government because she has been consulting with the top Democrats, and you know how big of an influence Bernie Sanders has had on the Democrat Party.
Oh, yes. He's forced them to go more left.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he would have won.
And so my conspiracy is, even though officially the adherents to modern monetary theory are quite low, because this theory exists, the people that are actually in power are using modern monetary theory as kind of a guide to guide their economic philosophy, and that has been since adopted by Bernie Sanders. If not the theory itself, the philosophies of people who have been consulted by the face of modern monetary theory.
Right.
So I'm going to talk about it.
I'm going to talk about it.
Well, thank you for the warning.
So in case someone is listening to just the modern monetary theory clip, could you play the Three Stooges clip one more time?
The Three Stooges clip one more time.
Yeah.
$10. $10.
Money, how about the $20 you owe me? Oh, yeah? Well, I only got 10, so here's 10, I owe you 10. Thanks. Hey, Mo, you owe me 20. Well, here's 10, I'll owe you 10. You owe me 20. Here's 10, I owe you 10. Here's the 10 I owe you. Here's the 10 I owe you. Here's the 10 I owe you. Good, now we're all even. Speaking of money, how about the $20 you owe me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah? Well, I only
Stop
got 10, so
playing.
here's
Stop it.
It's funny every time I see it. But again, it is a good metaphor of how our money system works and how the economy works for
it's
that
even
matter.
funnier to me. Because I mishear it every time.
If you take those three people that are in a circle and they're just passing $10 around to pay their debts or whatever, and then you multiply it by 1 million, and suddenly it's 1 million people passing around $10 and also providing a good or service for each other every time they pass around the money, and also they become better off every time they pass around the money. That's basically how our economy works.
It's like that stupid thing floating around of the, here, I'll put $20 in the box. And you put 20. I'll put $10 in the box. You put $20 in the box. I'll pay you $10 for the box. Or something, or however that stupid thing goes. It ends up, nobody's actually making money off of it. In fact, you're losing money.
So anyway, but if at some point, so that's the beauty of the free market, is that when people have money, they're willing to provide the good or service. The economy keeps going around and it's great. But sometimes, even with the free market, you run into a situation where someone says, hey, I want this. Will you provide me the good or service? And they say, do you have the money? And you say no. Then the going around just stops because you don't have the money.
Yes.
And so according to modern monetary theory, they want to solve that problem by basically saying that whenever someone is willing to offer a good or service, but the person who demands that good or service doesn't have enough money to pay for that good or service, it means they're not spending enough money. Because the way modern monetary theory works is they say that the government spends money first and then you get your paycheck. So they're saying that instead of the government needing the money of the taxpayer needs money from the government because government spending is what spurs the economy.
That is some Common Core math bullshit.
Yes.
Right there.
It also explains... It also explains why when they were giving out the checks during the pandemic, they were so pissed that so many people were paying off debt with those checks instead of buying things with them.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to pay off debt. You're supposed to buy things. Yeah, I bought less debt.
Yes.
That's not how it works.
It was a good purchase.
Why? Because that reduces inflation without you increasing interest rates? Oh, yeah.
They saw through my plan.
Foibled again.
So anyway, yeah, it's a great system. The free market, it's a great system where there's money available to match both supply and demand. No, it is not perfect because, yes, it's true. Sometimes someone doesn't have the money, and so it stops. And the government thinks that they can solve that problem by spurring the economy with more spending. But the problem with that is they're basically saying, yes, that's a problem with free market, but don't worry, if you give us all the power, we will solve that blemish on the free market. And that's total bullcrap.
Like I said.
That is one big pile of shit.
We have to abandon free market principles to save free market.
So can the government create any wealth?
Yes. No?
No. Because they don't innovate with any products.
Negative.
They don't provide any service that can generate profit. One. So.
But you just said they can print and print and print. That's making.
So, left. So let's take some leftist politicians as an example, like Bernie Sanders or AOC. They have a vision like the Green New Deal or universal health care that they are pressed to push. And what is the one question that will make AOC or Bernie Sanders melt like a bucket of water on a witch?
How do you spell your name?
No.
Oh.
Close. But no. It's like asking what is a woman.
I'm not a witch. I'm your wife.
So Bernie says he wants to enact universal health care. What's the one question you can ask him that'll make him melt?
How are you going to pay for it?
How are you going to pay for it?
Well, it's quite simple, really.
We're gonna tax the millionaires and the billionaires. Oh wait, I'm a millionaire. We're gonna tax the billionaires.
He did do that, yes.
So, this, like my main source for this modern monetary theory is from Glenn Beck's The Great Reset. It's a fabulous book.
Oh, you conspiracy theorist! You also said the word that's going to get us banned on YouTube. Let's see if it actually happens.
Hey, it only.
Are you serious?
Hey,
Saying
it
the Great
only.
Reset
It will
is gonna
only.
get us banned
Yes.
on YouTube.
Yes.
Okay, the Great Reset, Glenn Beck, those things will only get us banned if we also mention Soros and oh shoot. Dang it! Missed it by that much.
So anyway, it's a really great book. I think I could probably get.
And now we wait for that.
Now we wait.
Segments out of this.
Strike me down.
Let's go to page 115. Here's a fun example.
Do it.
Here's a fun example of the how are you going to pay for it question, just destroying a leftist politician's hopes and dreams. So in from page 115, referring to the question of how are you going to pay for it, this boogeyman struck the deep blue state of Vermont in 2014. Soon after passing a state-level universal health care plan, the then governor, Peter Schmolin, was distraught to find his team had failed to craft a realistic plan to pay for the ambitious project.
Shocker.
It turned out that any state plan to fund the government-run healthcare system would have required massive tax increases that would have put a state at risk of economic shock. Shumlin was eventually forced to abandon the plan of universal health care program, a move he called the greatest disappointment of my political life so far.
And everybody else called the greatest miracle of his political career so far.
So anyway, so that just shows how powerful that question is they have to like grapple with reality, but if you ask the question, how are you going to pay for it? It basically causes them to shrink to ashes.
As long as they actually try to answer it honestly with real numbers.
The thing that's so funny about this is this governor, he was elected to enact this government-run healthcare program.
Right.
So it was the biggest dream of his life, but then he looked at the price tag and he's like, this can't work. It just can't work.
He advertised daisies and rainbows and forgot that it's actually raisins and poop that he actually...
It doesn't matter how pretty it is. Even unicorn shit stinks.
So it's really funny because Bernie Sanders, he has quotes. I don't have them in front of me, but his quotes are something like, this desperately needs to pass in Vermont because people need to see an example of universal health care working. And in Bernie Sanders' state of Vermont, it failed.
Oops.
Because not even the governor who was elected to enact universal health care could actually enact it because it was just so unrealistic.
Well, real universal health care has never been tried.
Too soon?
So another fun example is the Green New Deal, which failed to earn a single Democrat vote in the Senate.
Oops.
And Mike Lee's video is an epic response to the seriousness it deserves. If you could start that at 1 minute.
Uno momento.
Yes, that's what he asked you to start.
After all, this isn't going to pass. Not today, not anytime soon, certainly. Rather, after reading the Green New Deal, I'm mostly afraid of not being able to get through this speech with a straight face. For Mr. President, I rise today to consider the Green New Deal with the seriousness it deserves.
I think that's about it. So
this is, of course, a picture.
Stop it. Okay, so yeah.
Come on, you're teasing us with a raptor.
With that picture.
Holding a flag, the U.S. flag, and it's bridled. That means somebody is riding the raptor.
A lot of material to cover, you guys. So again, this is Mike Lee. The Green New Deal would have doubled the national debt or something like that, and I believe it was equivalent to writing everyone a check of like $200,000. That was the price tag on it, and also it banned things like air travel, which is insane.
Well, we can just use high-speed
as well
trains.
As cars or roads or something like that. And so a good example of him making fun of the policies that it banned is starting at 3:30.
Okay, push play for a second before you move there because I want to see the rest of that picture. Just
fine.
There you go.
There it is.
Ronald Reagan
riding a raptor holding an American flag. Booyah. Okay, move to the 3:30 mark. That's all we needed.
Are you satisfied with your care?
I am satisfied with my care.
Okay.
How are we supposed to get around the vast expanses of, say, Alaska during the winter? Well, I'll tell you how.
Is this the tauntaun?
Tauntauns, yes! Mr. President. This is a beloved species of reptomammals, native to the ice planet of Hoth. Now, while perhaps not as efficient in some ways as airplanes or as snowmobiles, these hairy bipedal species of space lizards offer their own unique benefits. Not only are tauntauns carbon neutral, but according to a report a long time ago, and issued far, far away, they may even be fully recyclable and usable for their warmth, especially on a cold night. What about Hawaii? Isolated 2,000 miles out into the Pacific Ocean. Under the Green New Deal's effective airplane prohibition, how are people there supposed to get to and from the mainland? And how are they supposed to maintain that significant portion of their economy that's based on tourism? At that distance, swimming would, of course, be out of the question, and jet skis are notorious gas guzzlers. No, all residents of Hawaii would be left with is this. This is a picture of Aquaman, a superhero from the undersea kingdom of Atlantis, and notably here, a founding member of the Super Friends.
Okay, you can stop it.
I draw your attention.
I want to see him do a full stand-up routine.
Anyway. So that's Mike Lee, one of the most fiscally conservative members of the Senate. And he's giving like a speech on basically how absurd the Green New Deal is. And so that was another fun example of the question, how are you going to pay for it? Making a leftist policy crumble into ash. So, how do governments traditionally pay for things?
I'll work for Potter now.
With taxes.
With taxes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, the problem with taxes is if they raise taxes on businesses, then that leads to higher unemployment. If they raise taxes on sugary drinks, their constituents get mad. If they issue an extra 30 cents tax on every gallon of gas, protests erupt. Basically, every avenue of raising additional revenue through taxes has a great deal of pushback, and politicians absolutely hate that.
I wonder why.
And so that brings me to modern monetary theory. How do you think leftist politicians would react if I told them I could just take away the legitimacy of that question? How are you going to pay for it? If I could just take away that question and it would not bother them anymore, how do you think leftist politicians would react?
Positively.
They would embrace it fully, I'm sure. So my main source is a book called The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton, who I mentioned her resume a moment ago, that she was a main economic theorist in 2014 and 2015, and she was hired by Bernie Sanders. And we know how influential Bernie Sanders has been on the Democrat Party.
Karl Marx ridic.
And so the gist of the book is that everyone should stop worrying so much about debts and deficits because the government can print as much money as it wants. Here are some quotes directly from the book. Federal deficits are good for the economy. She argues that we could have avoided the recession in 2008 by just spending more money.
Keep going.
And bigger deficits would have enabled a faster and stronger recovery, protecting millions of families. But unfortunately, again, this is a quote from the book, Obama was a conservative when it came to fiscal policy.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
So, in 2008, right before Obama took office, so this is a fiscal conservative, according to Stephanie Kelton. In 2008, right before Obama took office, the national debt was at $10 trillion. When he left office in 2016, it was 19.5 trillion. So Obama doubled the national debt. So from 1776 to 2008, like all of those presidents combined spent as much as Obama did during his 2 terms.
No. You gotta give credit where credit's due. Not quite double.
Okay, fine.
That was a horrible Obama impression. I'm not able to.
I used to be able to do a good Obama impression, but it's been so long since I've heard him talk, I can't do it anymore.
Thank goodness. And I have no intention of reminding
myself how it sounded. Yeah.
But anyway, and then so in 2019, and again, just to go over what I was saying, that the leftist politicians, or I mean, also whoever did the COVID bailouts, my conspiracy theory is that they are embracing modern monetary theory, even if they are not officially embracing it. In 2019, the national debt was 22.7 trillion. So between, basically all of the Trump era until 2020, they'd spent another $2.7 trillion dollars.
Yes.
Well, maybe a little over 3, but anyway. And then suddenly in 2020, it jumped to 27.8 billion. Oh yeah, you're looking at the graph. Fantastic. And so it just keeps going up from there. So it went from 10 trillion to 20 trillion under Obama, and then from 20 trillion to 30 trillion under Trump and Biden so far. So technically per year, we've spent more than even Obama did. And according to modern monetary theory, Obama was a fiscal conservative.
Ouch.
So going off of a few more quotes from modern monetary theory, let's see. So some of my notes are to just read quotes directly from the book. Well, this is Glenn Beck's book, who quotes the Modern Monetary Theory book. I've read about a third of that book straight, the Stephanie Kelton's book.
Riveting read, I'm sure.
Oh, it's so funny. I did
that was
not
a fantastic
know.
delivery.
Funny haha or funny so I don't cry?
No, it's
I
funny.
laugh.
Like, as soon as you can get past the tragedy of it, it's actually pretty funny.
Oh, so it's a Shakespeare. I can't stand reading Shakespeare.
Talking more about modern monetary theory. So quoting from Glenn Beck's book, this is Glenn Beck quoting The Deficit Myth by Stephanie Kelton.
Quote the quoter.
Yeah, MMT starts with a really simple observation, and that is that the US dollar is a simple public monopoly. In other words, the United States currency comes from the United States government. It can't come from anywhere else, and therefore it can never run out of money. It cannot face a solvency problem, bills coming due that it can't afford to pay. It never has to worry about finding the money in order to be able to spend. It doesn't need to go and raise taxes or borrow money before it is able to spend. So what that means is that the federal government is nothing like a household. In order for households or private businesses to be able to spend, they've got to come up with the money, right? And the federal government doesn't have to behave like a household. In fact, it becomes really destructive for the economy if the government tries to behave like a household. You and I are using the US dollar. States and municipalities, the state of Kansas or Detroit, they're also using the US dollar. Private businesses are using the dollar. The federal government of the United States is issuing our currency, and so we have a very different relationship to the currency. That means in order to spend, the government doesn't have to do what a household or private business has to do, find the money. The government can simply spend the money into the economy, and when it does, the rest of us end up receiving that spending as part of our income. So in other words, the theory states that when the government spends, then that stimulates the economy and we get part of that money in our paycheck. Mike, you look physically sick.
I think I just had a small stroke.
An aneurysm.
What?
You are officially handicapped.
The more money the government spends that it doesn't have,
the more money that we have to spend that we don't have, that the government gave us by spending money they don't have.
Right. Right? Keith?
Say that again.
So, the more money the government spends that it doesn't have,
the more money that we have to spend that we
Yes.
don't have that the government spent by not having it.
Yeah, so again, looking at the Three Stooges thing and pretend instead of a circle of three, it's a circle of a million.
And instead of passing around $10, they're passing around an IOU.
yes.
I mean, according to the theory, because like what that $10 did is it went around a bunch of times, and that caused a bunch of people to provide a good or service.
The $10 paid off $60 worth of debt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's good. That is good. And sometimes a person says, hey, I want this good or service. Can you provide it? And they say no, unless you have the money. And if they don't have the money, then the circle just stops, and that's bad. And it is. And you could argue that, and so what they argue is that every time that happens, it's because the government didn't spend enough money.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wrong.
That they didn't have to spend
in the first place.
In the first place.
Yes.
Because you
I'll
can
get to my
spend,
critiques.
You can spend something without having something to spend.
I'll get to my critiques of modern monetary theory in a minute here. But
My
for now-
critique.
For now, I'm trying to
I
argue
can throw
in
it out
favor of
there
modern monetary
right
theory.
now. The entire thing is asinine.
All 9 donkeys worth.
There is
asinine.
I just gestured to all of it.
Hold on. You need to hear it from the horse's mouth before you dismiss it.
Don't listen to asses.
We can dismiss it in a minute. Let's at least understand it before we dismiss it. Okay.
I don't know that I'll ever be able to understand it.
You can't insult asses like that. They at least have some value.
Continue on.
Okay, so here's another quote from the book. This is Glenn Beck quoting Stephanie Kelton. Normally, I think people tend to hear deficit and think it's something that we should strive to eliminate.
It is.
That we shouldn't be running budget deficits, that deficits are evidence of fiscal irresponsibility.
They are.
Gosh, guys, can you at least let me talk? And the truth is that the deficit can be too big. Evidence of a deficit that's too big would be inflation, but the deficit can also be too small. It can be too small to support demand in the economy, and evidence of a deficit that is too small is unemployment. So deficits can be too big, but they can also be too small. And the right level of the deficit is the one that gets you a balanced overall economy, the one that allows you to achieve high levels of employment and low inflation.
It's so absurd that even the porg that's completely made up can't believe how made up this is.
Yeah, so I mean, effectively, it's she's arguing the same objectives of the Fed, which is to have
that is some of
low
the most
unemployment and low inflation. So one thing I will say, go ahead, Mike. What's your thought?
That is some of the most circular logic I've ever heard.
Not going to disagree with you.
That being said, it is completely on par with people that think that way anyway.
The mental circle jerk that just happened.
The mental circle jerk.
Oh, just wait.
I can't even right now.
I've lost my ability to even.
It gets better?
Oh, it gets better. Just wait until we talk about taxes.
How does it get better?
Okay. So far, modern monetary theory is pretty simple. You need something, just print more money. So to their credit, they do say over and over again that inflation is the main driver that indicates that the government should stop spending money.
Right.
So they're saying that they should create some kind of balance. But again, if you look at the national debt, according to them, increasing the national debt from $10 to $20 trillion as being a fiscal conservative. So that gives you an idea of just how big their thinking is on how much money they think they can spend.
Obama didn't go far enough.
That's literally what they're saying. They called Obama a fiscal conservative in the book.
Did you realize that spending that much money causes more inflation?
No, not if you circle around the logic enough.
Okay.
Eventually, you're too dizzy to understand.
So that sounds great, right? If there's ever anyone that needs something and is willing to work for it, ensuring there's always money ready and available for that person to spend, and the other person is willing to provide that good or service, it'll keep the economy running at maximum capacity forever, right? Right. Well, so
I once saw some kids try to do this with a merry-go-round using a tow strap in a truck. It didn't go very well.
So what we've talked about so far, it brings up two fundamental big questions. The first question is, if the government can print all the money that it wants, then why would they need to tax anyone? And the second question is, how would they avoid inflation? Those are the two big questions that it brings up, and she addresses each of these questions.
My big question is, how are you going to fund it?
Well, no, according to modern monetary
Print
theory,
money.
because the government has a monopoly on the currency, it can create as much money as it wants, and everyone has to abide by the that currency. So it presupposes that everyone will continue to use that currency.
Hold on. Who is this chick again?
Stephanie Kelton. She is an economist, and she was the main economic advisor for the Democrat minority party in 2014
She
and
sounds like a
2015.
sci-fi novelist is what she sounds like.
Let's see if I spelled her name right. How do you spell her name?
Kelton. Assuming I spelled it correctly. Yeah. Straight from Glenn Beck's book.
Shethid.
Kelton. Stephanie Kelton.
Let's see. How old are you? When did we go off the gold standard, Mike?
1970. Or in the 70s, I should say.
Off the gold standard?
Yeah.
It was earlier than that.
No, I don't think so.
Was it in the 50s?
I believe so.
Okay.
Oh, the gold standard.
Yes.
Yes, the gold standard.
I might be
1933.
thinking of two different things. Oh,
Yeah,
it was
it
1933?
was March 1933.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we left the gold standard that was Roosevelt that did
I thought
that.
it was in the 70s. Well, I learned something
Yeah,
today.
that was
Good for me.
one of the very first things that President Franklin D. Roosevelt did upon entering office was to remove us from the gold standard.
Yeah. And then Carter was the bulk of the 70s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that explains it. Okay. She was born in 1969. So she has zero experience living in a system that's backed by something.
Anyway, so in her book, Kelton outlines 4 ways taxes can be used as tools. The first one is to force everyone to use the currency. So under modern monetary theory, businesses and individuals would be forced to use the dollar or whatever currency they have the power to print. And this has to be the case because if no one demanded the currency they could print an unlimited amount of, then it would be useless to the government. It would be as useless to the government as it was to reality. These are my own words. So this means that alternate currencies like cryptocurrencies would not be allowed. Therefore, if taxes were only payable in the currency the government is issuing, then these companies and individuals would need to use this currency. Does that make sense? So
yeah,
they require taxes in that currency.
So what are they going to do to people that decide to just trade goods instead?
Well, I think this is a good time to go to the clip because I actually think that forcing people to use their currency, it presupposes that that's what they would want to do. But there's actually another reason.
Just straight across trade work.
Hold on.
I'm trying to make it not do that.
Another way to force people to use the currency is to give a digital currency, which like I mentioned before, that's another can of worms. So we'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, one purpose of taxes is to force everyone to use their currency. So this I thought was a funny clip on what they get wrong on it presupposes that people would demand their currency. And so this is what happens when someone presupposes they demand a currency. I thought that was just a funny clip that was relatable. So go ahead.
Look great, bro. Yeah, I'm really glad we went with the color. Oh yeah, they pop. A little bit more expensive than I would have thought.
Yo, but that's worth it though. That's an old poor move. You take your money and you put it into something worth it. You're not tacky. See, by transferring all of our cash into these Patty's dollars and then printing more of these babies than we ever had in cash, we've upped our value.
Shit. Oh, god damn it. Full-blown shantytown. We're screwed.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait, dude. There could be some real opportunity in this.
Yeah?
Yeah, man. Think about this, dude. In recession times, what thrives more than anything else?
Prostitutes.
No, well, yeah, that and bars.
Oh, and bars!
Right, because people gotta drown their sorrows.
Get drunk!
We own a bar!
Yeah!
So why don't we take these Patty's dollars and just distribute them amongst the shanties? That way...
They buy the booze from us with the dollars.
Right, and then they run out of booze, then they gotta buy more Patty's dollars from
Thus
us.
creating the self-sustaining economy we've been looking for.
It stimulates our economy. That's what Dave & Buster's does.
Give me one up here.
Boom.
Boom! Who wants some free money, shanties?
Nice doing business with you, huh?
All right, shanty. Enjoy it.
All right, enjoy yourselves.
Boom!
Okay. Hey,
We
I
did
think
it.
we made every single one of our Patty's dollars back,
You're
buddy.
damn right. Thus creating the self-sustaining economy we've been looking for.
That's right.
How much fresh cash did we make?
Fresh cash.
Yes.
Well, zero. Zero if you're talking about U.S. currency. People didn't really seem interested in spending any of that.
That's okay. So when they run out of the booze, they'll come back in and they'll have to buy more Patty's dollars.
Right.
Keeping it moving.
That is assuming, of course, that they will come back here and drink.
They will. They will, because we'll redistribute these to the shanties, thus ensuring them coming back in, keeping the money moving.
Well, no, but if we just redistribute these, then people will continue to drink for free.
Okay.
How does this work, Mac?
The money keeps moving in a circle.
But we don't have any money. All we have is this. How does this work,
I
dude?
don't know. I thought you
were... What? I thought you were on top of this.
You're the one that came up with the plan.
Did I come up with this
last night, dude?
Oh.
With the DMB power card and
I blacked out that night.
Shit, dude, I've been following your lead.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, shit.
Okay, so we have no money and no inventory. There's still something we can do. That's still a business somehow.
How does DMBs do it? I think I got a complicated system worked out. I cannot begin to understand it.
How does a self-sustaining economy work?
I don't know.
Anyway, this just reminded me of the modern monetary theory. People
That
in
sounds
action.
exactly like modern monetary theory,
Yes.
actually.
100%.
They presuppose, anyway, that they'll use the currency. So that's some of my criticisms of modern monetary theory. In clip form, so I thought that was pretty funny. Anyway, so another way that they could use they could use people to force them to use the currency is using a digital currency, which we'll talk about on another episode. The second way that they can use taxes is taxes can be used as inflation control. Once again, and they said this over and over and over again in the book, is that they're not advocating, modern monetary theory is not advocating for unlimited spending. They're advocating for the spending until inflation gets out of control.
Spend until inflation's out of control.
That's what they say. But then when they like the solution they give for when inflation starts happening, listen to their solution.
So spend until inflation is out of control.
And then spend some
and then,
more.
So yeah, inflation
this.
inflation happening is just a sign that maybe the government spent too much, and so therefore taxes can be used as inflation control
To bring that money back.
So according
to the
according to Kelton, inflation is a warning sign of overspending, not deficits. But remember, deficits are good under modern monetary theory. So if inflation occurs, how should government deal with the problem? Should the government reduce spending? Of course not. According to Kelton, instead of reducing spending, they should raise taxes to force us to cut back a little to make room for additional government spending. So they're suggesting that when inflation occurs, they just need to destroy the wealth of the people and businesses to make room for more government spending.
I don't like this. I don't like it.
Yeah. All right. So
that may be one of the most insanely idiotic things I've ever heard.
Ever.
Page. Let's see here. And the third purpose of taxes is wealth redistribution.
There's a fun word.
So according to Kelton and others, taxes can help reduce wealth inequality by confiscating wealth from those deemed too rich, theoretically balancing the scales. So in other words, they would use taxes to tackle income inequality. I'm just going to read this whole page. So moving beyond Kelton, some MMT academics take an even more radical view of the use of taxation. Professor L. Randall Rye wrote the following response in reactions to questions about how taxes relate to modern monetary theory. So this is a quote by a different professor, Randall Ray. So this isn't in Kelton's book. His quote says, "For far too long, left-leaning Democrats have had a close symbiotic relationship with the rich. They've needed the good rich folks like George Soros, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Bob Rubin to fund their think tanks and political campaigns. The centrist Clinton wing has repaid the generosity of Wall Street."
Did it just call the Clintons centrist?
Yes.
If it makes you feel any better, her blog has had no updates since 2020.
So
there's a donate button, though, if you...
Again, moving on with the quote here, the centrist Clinton wing has repaid the generosity of Wall Street's neoliberals with deregulation that has allowed the CEOs to shovel money to themselves, vastly increasing inequality and their own power. And they, in turn, rewarded Hillary, who, by their own account, accepted whatever money they would throw in her direction. Today's progressive won't fall into that trap. How are you going to pay for it? Through a budget authorization, Uncle Sam can afford it without the help of the rich. And by the way, they're going to tax you anyway because you've got too much income, too much wealth, too much power. What will we do with the tax revenue? Burn it. Uncle Sam doesn't need your money. In reality, taxes just lead to debits to bank accounts. We'll just knock off 3 or 5 zeros off the accounts of the rich. Whoa. Of course, double entry bookkeeping means we also need to knock off zeros debts held by the rich. So we'll wipe out zeros off student loan debts, the mortgage debts, auto loan debts, and credit card debts off American households. Yes, debt cancellation too. So, in other words, according to this modern monetary theorist, they would just basically destroy the wealth of the rich and destroy the depths of... I don't think the poor is quite the right word, but like the people they like.
Oh, so the proletariats and the oh, dang it, Marx is leaving my mind, which is good.
Yeah. So in other words, that so they would tax. So yeah, what income inequality? They would use it to balance out income inequality. They would basically tax the wealth or the existence really of the people that they don't like, and buoy up the people that they do like in one way or another. And by them burning the currency, like the taxes that they bring in, that is supposedly their way to control inflation. So by burning the money of the wealthy, that therefore like reduces the money in circulation, therefore fighting inflation, according to modern monetary theory.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So that brings us to the fourth way taxes can be used under modern monetary theory, even though they don't actually need the tax revenue. So an example, so going into this is like an example that we're all familiar with, speeding tickets. They're good for everyone, right? It's a source of revenue for the local police department. It's a deterrent for unsafe driving. It's great.
I'm going to let that slide.
I was waiting for something.
Anyway, another point of taxes is to give fines.
Well, pardon me, young man, and excuse the shit out of my goddamn French, but did you just threaten me?
Yeah, so that's literally another
yeah,
point
he did. I see.
Of taxes is to give fines for the behavior they deem inappropriate. And so here's a quote from Kelton herself from the book. Government can use taxes to encourage or discourage certain behaviors to improve public health, battle climate change, or deter risky speculation in financial markets.
So that's probably the truest thing she's ever seen.
Someone just admitted that all fines are nothing more than a tax.
So, again, taking that a step further than what she admitted in her book, maybe there would be a fine for eating too much meat, or a tax for not having a high enough ESG score, or using too much water, or just use your imagination. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Like, was it New Jersey that did the soda tax, and it did nothing for them because everyone just went across the street to the neighboring states and bought soda for cheaper?
Yes, but you won't be able to do that here because it'll be a completely federal controlled thing. So it'll be the same everywhere.
Yes. Anyway, so that's the first question that printing all of the money brings up is why would you tax people? And I just gave you 4 reasons why they would still want to tax people under modern monetary theory. The second one is how
they're douchebags.
How they would battle inflation. And we briefly talked about that with the tax solutions, is that they would tackle income inequality and just basically burn the wealth of the rich, and collecting taxes to therefore fight inflation. But inflation, even with taxes, still remains modern monetary theory's biggest problem they are concerned with. Once again, when I was reading Kelton's book, she would talk about that over and over again, that inflation is still a concern that they would need to battle. So as you know, other money printing happy countries have tried printing all the money they could ever want. One example is in 2008, Zimbabwe. Hyperinflation was so bad that inflation reached 89.76 trillion %. And in 2009, they released a $100 trillion bill. But don't worry. MMT has a brilliant solution. I don't know if I can get through this next part with a straight face. MMT has a brilliant solution for why that hyperinflation would never happen in America. So they have 3 reasons. And the first 2 are dumb, but the third one is like a punchline. So I'll go over the first 2. I think I can get through this one with a straight face. The first reason why hyperinflation would never happen in the United States is because the US dollar is a world reserve currency. So everyone would just keep using it, right? Ha!
Oops.
Yeah. So according to MMT, they assumed that would be true no matter what. So that's brilliant, right? And the second reason is most of the worst examples of hyperinflation happened under very specific set of circumstances, such as civil war or huge external debts in foreign currency. But
or
because
government overspending.
Not this.
No, that is not a reason, according to MMT. But because the US dollar is a world reserve currency, we have protections against both of these threats. So I guess number 1 and number 2 are kind of the same reason.
Oops.
And then, number 3, there's one unstoppable weapon to protect against hyperinflation. Any guesses?
Nudists.
No. Should I say it?
Yes.
The congressional...
Prostitution.
Oh. Are we done with our guesses?
Yes.
Should I just say it?
Say it.
The Congressional Budget Office.
Ah, yes. The all-reliable, all-knowing, never wrong Congressional Budget Office.
Yeah, the Congressional Budget Office has been known to be off by hundreds of percents in different things. But
hundreds of percents?
No, seriously.
We were wrong. How much were you wrong by? 100%? We were 100% wrong. Completely off the mark.
Okay, so here's another quote.
Why? I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
It may or may not be completely related or not related at all. Why does everyone that pushes this kind of Bolshevik have crazy eyes?
Because they're crazy.
That's my guess as well. Yeah.
Push it.
I'm looking through her website and every highlight thing they have of her, she's just as wide-eyed as
Kelton is also known to speak at the World Economic Forum.
Shocker.
By the way.
Shocker.
Okay, so yeah, it sounds like a joke that would be the protection against inflation.
That is a joke.
But Kelton said in 2019, so the best defense against inflation is a good offense. And what modern monetary theory does is try to be kind of hypersensitive to the risks of inflation. I don't see any other macro school of thought pay as careful attention as we do to the inflation risk question. And so what we would say is, look, if you are Congress and if you are considering a new spending bill, instead of thinking about the ways in which the new spending bill would add to the deficit or add to the debt, you should be thinking about ways in which that new spending has the risk of accelerating inflation and to avoid doing that. So instead of going to the Congressional Budget Office and saying, would you take a look at this piece of legislation and give us feedback? We'd like to know what this bill would do to the debt or deficit over time. Instead, go to the Congressional Budget Office or other government agencies and say, we're considering passing this $1 trillion investment in infrastructure. This is our bill. Would you look at it? And we plan to do this spending over the course of the next 5 years. Tell us if this would create problems in the real economy, evaluate the inflation risk, and come back to us and give us feedback.
Yeah, that'll never work.
So, yeah, according to her, the way to protect against inflation is to go to the Congressional Budget Office and say, hey, could you look at the inflation risks, and we will do our best to avoid the inflation risk, because they've been great at that so far.
This is what happens when someone grows up in a society that is so successful and so separated from having actual problems that they have to go and create problems in order to feel like they're contributing to society, because they have absolutely no skill set to actually help society.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to sum up, modern monetary theory gives hypothetical solutions to problems that have occurred in the past, such as hyperinflation, and assure us that using their chalkboards and confident-sounding voices that nothing could go wrong. Just give us all of the power, and all of our problems will go away.
Okay, Hitler.
So obviously, this is an incredibly risky experiment, and my question is, what happens if the experiment doesn't go as expected? What do you think the odds are that the experiment wouldn't go as these academics would expect?
5,000%.
As sure as SVP is no longer a bank.
Yeah. So, in other words, the worst case scenarios here is the dollar could become worthless. And what do you think that would be like, Trevor?
Fun. It's just fun with a capital F.
And a U.
And an emphasis on the U.
So the thing that I find really insane about this is that people still believe in this theory already. Without any official adoption of modern monetary theory, we are already in danger of losing our world reserve currency status. And that would come for hyperinflation for sure, because all of those dollars that are in the world would come roaring back to the United States.
That's what they would use as the excuse of why modern monetary theory didn't work, is because the currency was no longer, because that's their big catch right there as well. It's the national.
How to make sure your thought can never be defeated
is.
Yeah. And so basically, now I'm speculating here, but I'm suspicious that the world elites, such as, the big world leaders and people at the World Economic Forum and so forth, it's almost like that's what they want to happen, is the dollar to fail, because the way that governments take control over society is that they wait until a crisis and then they take control to solve the crisis. No. So what could I see happen is that the dollar fails because of all this spending, and then just the world governments all get together and they create a worldwide digital currency and enact modern monetary theory there, and then that currency fails. And they're like, no, you guys, you're not supposed to react this way. You're supposed to have confidence in this new currency. Guys, stop behaving the way that it's rational to behave. Like,
Quidditor will tax you.
Why isn't anybody having fun? I specifically requested it.
Yeah. So anyway,
that's all right. As long as we don't lose the Second Amendment, they can bitch and moan all they want about it.
Well, that's another thing.
Your modern theory right here.
I got your modern monetary theory right here.
Well, again, I'm getting into digital currency here, but if they were to enact a digital currency, which the Fed is talking about already, like, this isn't even a world reserve digital currency. This is the Fed creating their own digital currency. Hypothetically, even with the Second Amendment, they wouldn't outlaw the right to guns, but they could basically regulate the transactions related to guns.
They could regulate the ability you have to spend their money on guns.
Yes.
Fair.
They will never be able to fully regulate people's ability to trade services and goods with each other under their nose.
How to create a massive black market for
that
firearms.
is what a black market is.
Yeah, how to create a black market for firearms speed run.
And there is zero chance that they ever enact anything that is going to keep some people from possessing those things.
So,
especially when they are already possessed.
Yes.
So, putting my conspiracy
or have been
hat
lost
on,
in a boating accident.
Tragic, really.
Yeah. So, putting my conspiracy hat on for a minute here, like, what I think is happening here is I think that the United States government has adopted modern monetary theory, like unofficially, because they've been advised by these sorts of economists. And they're just not worrying about the debt. And I'm also suspicious that there are elites that want the US dollar to fail. And once it does, they can take control of, create a new currency or whatever and bail everyone out with this new currency and make it digital and then control our lives. And it's the end of freedom. And
been there for a while.
I'm going to go further. So that's the ambition of, again, this is my allegation of what the elites want, is they want the dollar to fail so they can act a world digital currency. But moving further beyond the world currency, I think that is going to fail because this modern monetary theory is total garbage.
Of course.
And so if the world currency fails, like we're talking Soviet Union levels of mismanagement. And so enacting this theory could literally destroy nations and the peoples in those nations.
Well, modern monetary theory is a form of communism.
Yeah, sure.
And the F in communism stands for food.
Wait, there is no F in
Got it in one.
He's a quick learner.
Got it in one.
Hey, if you go to her website, you can request an interview with her.
We should have her on the show.
I really, really, really don't want to go to the hospital.
Or jail.
Because of the aneurysms that we'd have by talking to her?
Yes.
All right, well, I'd just like to get... No. We didn't ask you a question. We just want you to sit there and listen.
So anyway, to sum up, the academics think that they have it all under control, but as we've seen by the recent crises, by government spending, and really every government program ever, and any recommendation or prediction by any expert ever, they do not have things under control, and this is putting the fate of the country in their hands, and it will inevitably fail.
There's a scene from a movie that perfectly summarizes my feelings about everything that these people are doing and exactly how I view them. You've seen Dumb and Dumber, correct?
Yeah,
Multiple
I think
times.
so.
Multiple times. Good. It's okay. Talk for a second. I'm going to send you a clip.
I mean, I'm pretty much done.
All right.
Elites have no control over everything, and they're going to collapse everything because they think they have everything under control, but they do not.
Ooh, she even has a press kit that you can download.
Here you go, Trevor. It's in the email.
So you can download this press kit, and it's got all the promo pictures you can use. It's got a long bio, a short bio, because that's what you need.
Pop that right up
That
there.
one right there?
Yep, that one right there. Just give that a
one
little
right
click.
there.
And
Give her the old...
let it play.
Give her the old razzle-dazzle.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. Do.
Hold that plane! Sir, you can't go in there! It's okay! I'm a limo driver!
It's exactly how I view these people. It's exactly what they look like to me.
Yeah, pretty much. Again, that was someone going into a airplane boarding tunnel, and then there was no plane, so they just fell off. That's pretty much how academics
It's the
are.
pause at the doorway as somebody tries to stop them. It's okay. I'm a limo driver.
It's okay. I'm a professional.
It's okay. I'm an
expert.
economist.
Uh-huh. Hey, this seems like a bad idea. Excuse me. I am a professor of economics and public policy at Stony Brook University and senior fellow at Schwartz Center for Economic... Yeah. Your ideas are dumb.
I didn't ask you who you were. I said you're an idiot.
And just for your information, I've never heard of Stony Brook University, nor do I care about Stony Brook University.
Right.
Well, it's the most I said I don't care. because you're about to walk into a minefield, and I told you you're a moron because you're doing stupid ideas that makes you run into a minefield. It's okay, though. I'm an expert. All right, walk into the minefield.
I don't know.
So that's modern monetary theory. I think that our influential politicians have already enacted it, but by no means have they officially enacted it. But my goodness, our fiscal policy is garbage.
Only a lot.
That's a nice way to put it.
It's a lot. It's a steaming pile of garbage.
A big pile of it, really.
Yes.
Big pile of it. Well, that was riveting.
Yeah.
If your brain is still in one piece.
There's other phrases for that.
Emotional damage.
Yes. If the aneurysm didn't melt your brain trying to understand, that wasn't even a circle, because a circle at least makes sense. You know? It's just kind of a spaghetti bowl of
jerking.
Nothing.
Yes.
Those are two things that should never be in the same sentence ever again. Never. Ever again.
I'm just going to look around.
The logical circle jerk turned into a spaghetti bowl.
Full.
Get all tangled up. Oh, shit.
Doo-doo and feces all
All
over
right,
the wall.
Trevor, could you give us the outro?
No, he can't. I have that button.
That power rests with Mike. Yeah.
Like, subscribe,
share, laugh,
do all the things.
hate us, love us, whatever.
Follow us on Spotify. That's a good place to find us. Also, Rumble, YouTube.
Maybe
those
YouTube.
things.
We'll see if this one stays on
This
YouTube.
one won't stay up on YouTube. Find us on Rumble.
It's always there.
It's always there.
It's always
So.
sunny in Rumble.
Yep. And we'll catch you guys next time. Bye! I guess it helps if I hit the record button.
Yeah, if you hit that, then I can hit mine.
And then you can give everybody the clap.
The clap is back. Clap back.
There we go.
Indeed.
I'm kind of relieved you weren't recording before.
About what?
The clap?
No. Exactly.
I mean, if you want something to stay personal off air, you don't bring it up on air.
That's right. Oh, that's good. And no one will ever know what that laughter was about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a good place to start. Leave them in confusion.